Or Odin's son. You have betrayed the express command of your king. Through your arrogance and stupidity, you have opened these peaceful realms and innocent lives to the horror and desolation of war! You are unworthy of these realms, unworthy of your title! You're unworthy! I now take from you your power! The name of my father and his father before. I own it, your father! Cast you out!
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 122 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I am your host Becca and I'm joined here on Midgard by my fellow mighty warriors Chris and Dave. How are you both doing?
Good evening, folks.
I'm currently looking for a horse. That's what I'm after.
Looking for your horse?
Yes. A horse, a kingdom for my horse, yeah.
Oh,
no, I'm good, thank you.
Thought we were doing Thor, not Shakespeare.
It's done by the great bard, isn't it? Old Sir Ken.
This is it. Sir Ken Branagh, indeed.
I mean,
so following on,
it is one of the funny things because, when he was sort of told the basic, plot of the story, it was pretty much like, oh, so it's Henry V then? Oh, okay.
But it kind of is a little bit. They go into battle, I guess.
Well, it's kind of there are themes to other Shakespeare stuff, so I think that's probably what it plays to Ken's wheelhouse, doesn't it, so to speak?
It does, exactly, and obviously you've got a lot of the cast in this film appearing in Crown of Thorns, I want to say, but anyway, the Shakespeare historical adaptations from last year, which I may look up and repeat again later on in the show. Yes, anyway, tonight we're discussing Thor, starring Chris Hemsworth, Anthony Hopkins, Jamie Alexander, Tom Hiddleston, Idris Elba, Natalie Portman, Stellan Skarsgård, Kat Dennings, Rene Russo, and many, many more. With the score by Patrick Doyle, written by Ashley Miller, Zach Stentz, and Don Payne, and directed by Ken Branagh, Sir Ken, and released in 2011. What do we make of this film? Dave? I'll put you on the spot. Sorry.
I want to get the negatives out of the way early because they're quite big. I mean, it's a real problem. This film looks cheap, and I've just always had a problem with it. Now, when I say cheap, I don't mean Superman 4 or something. I don't mean it looks like it was made on a really slashed budget or anything like that. But it just looks a bit shit. I mean, I really have a problem with the sequences on Earth, particularly. That town looks pathetic. I mean, it really does. It looks like, and it is like a movie town redressed, more than a bit redressed. I mean, that would have a population of about 3. I mean, you see all of it in shot at one point near the end of the film. And there's just not enough room for anyone to live there. It really is pathetic. It looks awful, and it looks like a studio that won't spend any money. Now, when you look at the first phase films, they more or less allocated $150 million to each film, with the exception of Iron Man 2 and I think next week's film, but we'll come to that. And it wasn't enough for this. By the time you rebuild an entire town, it's not enough. It just isn't. It looks absolutely terrible. And I cannot overstate that. I think it looks awful. Now, some of the Asgard stuff looks a bit shit as well. Now, Asgard is quite nicely designed. But it looks a bit like... If you compare the current Paramount logo to the last Paramount logo, That's like the difference between the first film and the second Thor film. It's not quite there. So that's a problem with this film. The other things are, for some reason, somebody has decided to dye Chris Hemsworth's eyebrows and beard, and that looks utterly ridiculous.
I didn't notice that, to be honest, and I was like, that looks a bit strange.
Is that why it looks permanently like it's got some sand in it?
It looks terrible.
It's like somebody's bleached it, but like not in a very professional way, but like with a toothbrush or something.
It just looks awful.
It did take me out of the film a couple of times.
Now, as late as Phase 3, we've had an origin film with Black Panther. Now, we had seen Black Panther before, but because he was in Civil War. But we've seen, origin films very late in the day. And I honestly believe if Marvel had not done Thor in Phase 1, let's say they'd done Black Panther instead, and they'd come along at this stage now and said, right, we're going to introduce Thor. If they'd done this as the Thor film in Phase 3, they'd have been laughed at. I honestly think now we've moved on beyond this. It is such a basic kind of hero's journey origin film. It just, all of that I have a massive, massive problem with. But let's get all of that out of the way. The casting's really good. The performances are really good. I mean, to get a performance out of Anthony Hopkins these days is a bit of a miracle. So there's an awful lot to be said for this film. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think he's really good at kind of like an arrogant swagger. So there's a lot I like about this, and I'm trying to get the negatives out of the way. I won't be able to avoid it when we come to Act 3, because it's unavoidable when we get to that. But yeah, I've got some problems with this, and it's at once brave, because it's the first film where they really go, right, we're going to put magic into things now, and we're going to like push this universe on. But it's also a perfunctory, we've got to introduce Thor because he's going to be in the Avengers, and the film feels a bit like that. So I've got really mixed feelings on it. It's going to rank really low, but it's also a sign of how good Marvel have been, that it's going to rank really low, but that's not that terrible. So that's me to start off with.
Becca, do you want to go next?
Okay, why not? Yes, no, I quite enjoyed this film for obvious reasons. Two quite delicious male leads, but anyway, that's by the by.
A bit of Anthony Hopkins. Whoa!
She means Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah, well, as
obviously,
well.
Obviously. Brains over brawn any day. He was actually quite good in Mamma Mia 2, which I saw recently, so that was good fun.
What made you go see that?
I got dragged by a friend to go and see it.
You didn't get dragged at all, did you? You went voluntarily and loved it.
Well, is it better than the first one? Not that I know, because I've not seen it any of them at all.
I've seen the first one.
I've seen the first one. It was on TV over here in the UK recently. I think they screened it in prep for this new one. It's probably the same, and they work in some of the old songs, but there's a lot of like B-sides as well. And then two of the men behind ABBA are both in it. They have very quick cameos in the film, so that's quite good. Everything's tied up quite neatly. Like obviously in the first film, there's a bit of a, well, not really, but if you overthink it, there's a bit of a dilemma as to how she doesn't know why did she end up with three dads? And in this film, it's all tied up nicely.
Because her mother's a slapper.
Well, actually, it all kind of happens like. My mum was trying to describe it to me because obviously she grew up.
Did she just get really drunk and didn't know which one she slept with?
Did your mother grow up?
She was like, Donna gets together with all the guys in a very 70s way, and I was like, well, I wasn't born till 84, so what do you mean in a 70s way?
Your mum means she's used to having loads of cock.
And I was like, what are you on about? It's just like, because I thought, maybe she was a bit of a hoe and a bit bed hopping, and actually, no, that's not the case. It just happens. It falls like that, She hooks up with him one after the other, but not in a very, in a very 70s way.
When you say in a 70s way, do you mean listening to Led Zeppelin and having a 3-day week?
Probably, yeah, and do lighting. Dear, oh dear.
That's what a 3-day week means. You have
Miners' strike.
Yeah, you have 3 different men, 3 different days, and you're on to the
Quite
next week.
literally. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's better. It's probably the same, but just obviously different tunes. Bless him, this wasn't a still can't sting. Colin Firth looks the same. He's not changed. But it's just good upbeat tunes. It's a feel good story. Obviously little sad bits in between, but yeah, and it's so it's more of the same. So if you like the first one, chances are you'll enjoy the second one.
So, final thoughts on Mamma Mia?
Final thoughts on Thor, everybody. Yes, I can guarantee you those films we won't be covering on Do Specs Talk. Even though ABBA have a new album coming out, so chances are they'll have to do a third one, which I don't know how it would work out. But yeah, I don't think.
Well, I know I won't be seeing it anyway, so.
Well,
No.
I saw the first one. I didn't see it in cinemas, but like, if someone wanted to watch it, I'd watch it. And somehow I got around to watching the first one, and I can't remember how.
No, it's good fun. It's a good fun.
Even allowing for the fact that I'm not the target audience, it wasn't good.
No, I went to see it, and it was in my local cinema, and it was in one of like the 2 smallest screens that they have. And I think you could count the male members of the audience like on one hand. I thought, long-suffering husbands and boyfriends.
What were you doing counting male members?
Well, it was during a boring.
Using
scene.
a hand, no less.
Using a hand.
Yeah,
Yes,
a hand. I handled 5 male members.
I thought, yes. But no, you can count all the guys in the audience like on one hand. So, bless them.
You can fit all the male members in one hand.
Well, that's not what I said. That's what you said.
No, it's what you said. We all heard it.
So anyway, yeah, 4.
Anyway,
Becca.
thoughts back to Thor. That's how much I enjoyed it. I thought I'd diverge talking a different film. No, I quite enjoyed Thor. I would, compared to the Marvel films that we've received of late, quality. I mean, it's probably, as you say, not as Superman 4 cheap, and probably also not as cheap as. Well, it probably is, but I don't know. It's how like the Hulk film that we reviewed previously. That does look a little bit cheap. Some of the makeup, as you say, has been perfect. I can't speak. Some of Thor's makeup has been perfected as the series has gone on. Like the fire monster, I don't know what it is at the end, the giant robot creature.
Destroyer.
The Destroyer, that's the one.
The lazy plot device.
Yeah, I was going to say, it does seem a little bit like, insert monster here. I can't really see a connection between him and Loki, which is a bit odd. Or even, the film Central Villains at this point, obviously setting up for the Avengers later on. So, the cast are on fine form. It's got some fun facts about the cast coming up at the end of the show. I would say, the photography looks really good. I'd say some of the bits, Asgard does look beautiful, but I think by today's standards now, if they were to remake the series, this is probably ripe for a remake in terms of the visuals. Although one of my friends, my friend's brother worked for one of the production companies on this, but I don't know quite what he did, but I know he worked hard. The cast are on fine form, decent script. I think it is. To be fair, it does chug along at a fair old pace. As they talk about Anthony Hopkins' performance, I think it's kind of similar to Sean Connery. Like, he's made his millions, he's had his life. He's now, aside from actor, he's other things. He's got other string to his bow. But no, he is Odin. For all intents and purposes, he does give that kind of stately look to the film.
I love some of his line deliveries. Like, it's just sometimes he does the Anthony Hopkins thing of being regal and dramatic, and then just goes as a one line of just absolute insanity. Like, it goes to like but you're nuts, king.
But you're not king now, you.
And there's one point where he just sort of like shoos like Loki away, goes, hey. It always brings a smile on my face.
It's brilliant, isn't it? It does do a bit of the scenery, but no, he's a legend, and there is a reason why he's a legend, and that's why he is Odin. I don't think they could cast anybody else really, save probably Connery, but he will never come out of retirement.
Or Mel Gibson.
Oh, that's true.
No, I was just thinking, like, make a What Women Want remake out of this.
Oh God, are we going to have to review that film as well? Because I think you're a bit obsessed.
Yeah, because What Men Want is out in the new year.
Really?
Yeah, they
Mel Gibson?
finally. I have bemoaned the lack of a What Women Want remake, and suddenly there is like a sequel.
Really?
Yeah, What Men Want is out in the new year.
Right, I might look this up.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Okay.
So
Well,
anyway,
I'm sure it'll be good fun.
I don't know if I said it in my bit. I think I did, but like to see Anthony Hopkins not phoning it in at this stage, it almost sounds like humour. And Chris laughed, and I'm not like knocking him for doing that, but like I didn't actually mean it as a joke. It's like Anthony Hopkins has so much talent, and to actually like have him trying is rare. And when you watch it on the special features, it's like, no, he actually wants to be here and he's keen. So yeah, I'm really pleased.
Yeah, considering a lot of it is obviously like CGI, for example, especially in the sequels as well. You know, he doesn't just phone it in. He hasn't got to that stage now where like, you know, it's like he's not, you know, by no means like past his prime. To be fair, like it was kind of the main draws for this film for me, obviously. Hunky leader man, but also Ken Branagh directing.
Hunky Anthony.
Do you mean tasty or do you mean dishes?
All of the above.
Right.
And also I'm a bit of a Shakespeare nerd as well, and I'm not, you know, interested in all the film adaptations, despite getting some titles wrong earlier, but never mind. Ken Branagh, to me, it just seemed a complete curveball. I'm sure, you know, it was that just to my brain, which doesn't quite always work as well as other people's brains. To me, I was like, "What? You know, real left field material."
You know, when you, I can't. I don't think I ever did this, but I can sort of imagine it. I can imagine the general idea of going to see like a Shakespeare play with like my English teacher, where Shakespeare does this humour that like on the page works intellectually, but like isn't remotely funny anymore for lots of obvious reasons. And your English teacher will be sat there going,
"Oh God."
No, I found this film a bit like that. There was a bit where he was talking to like the what are they called? The something three? What are they called?
The Warriors 3.
Warriors
3, that's it. And he's talking about all the amazing things they've like done. And they're all there, and it does.
Guy went to Valhalla. Yeah,
and it totally comes across like school Shakespeare.
Smug.
Yeah.
No, it's a little bit like that, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was to say, obviously, yeah, Jaws of Hunky Leader Men, Ken Branagh, amazingly, and yeah, Anthony Hopkins as well. It's just like he's, you know, a really big key for this film, and plus there's a reason behind the casting, obviously, because he's quite magnetic. But there are what's the word? Oh, I can't think of it. Anyway, there are specific reasons why he was casted in this film, and also why Tom Hiddleston was cast as Loki, which I shall reveal later on. But no, overall, I enjoyed it. Clunky special effects, some aspects of the visuals are a little bit clunky, but great cast, great performances all round. Great score, which I enjoyed.
I'm really glad to hear you say that, Becca, because I got the impression both you and Chris, but you more so, were going to be really, really defensive of this film, particularly when I talked a week or so ago about saying how cheap it was. You know, it's totally interpretive beyond that, how much that affects you. Because, you know, you can look at it and go, well, it's cheap, but I really love it. And that would be totally, totally valid. It does have an effect for me, I'm afraid. I do think that, I mean, a lot of it is, it's really, really simple. And I'm not the biggest Thor lover anyway. But I am not going to be wildly, wildly in love with this film. And I'm not going to be wildly in love with this film. Partly because I'm not that in love with the character, and partly because it just looks like they needed to throw like $50 million more at it. It was almost like they said, no, it's $150 million. Well, hang on a minute, we got to spend $75 million like refurbishing that town, and they've gone, well, tough. That's our phase 1 budget, and it's a problem. So it's a problem on Asgard, but less so than I thought it would be. In that, when you look at the current Paramount logo, it looks quite nice. But if you go to like the one pre-2003, the sky looks a bit ridiculous. And it's the same with Thor. Like, it looks okay, but they don't look quite composited right. There are some clear bigatures there that
big miniatures.
They're kind of obvious, and I like the idea, but it's really obvious, and the rest of Marvel doesn't look like that. And but mainly it's that town, and I'm sure there are small towns in America, but literally we get the whole of the town in a shot at one point, and there's just not enough there to be anything residential. And also, you just look at it and go, well, on the commentary, Branagh talking about why he wanted to shoot in a town like that. And whilst I'm not accusing him of lying, I think that is still with the background of the budget. There's still, well, I wanted to shoot in a town like that. Actually, what he should have said was, I wanted to shoot in a town like that when I found that I only had $150 million to play with, when I actually needed like 225. So it's a problem. It is a problem to me. It does affect how I'm going to rank the film, but I'm getting it out front early because I don't want to spend the whole review going, this film's really cheap. So yeah, I've got massive issues with it, but actually there's lots to like about it too.
Yeah, I mean, one of the elements about the budget is, bear in mind, like, you know, Marvel wasn't like the Marvel we know now. I mean, it was coming off the back of like Iron Man 2. It was like, they already had like whispers of like, okay, how are they going to integrate magic into this series? So there was almost like okay, well, let's not go all the way in. Let's just try and see what we can do with a smaller scale story, and let's go. So I think that's partly down to the budgetary reasons, in consideration, which is, you can understand, but as Dave says, it's a perfectly valid criticism. This film's always like ranked like either like so. It's usually bottom end Marvel for most rankings that I tend to see on the internet. But for me, I really liked it from first viewing from cinema. I liked it from second viewing, and I continue to really, really like it. For me, this is probably top 5 for me.
I mean, I just will add the point that when we get to next week's film, I kind of paired them because they both came out in the same year after like a gap.
About a month apart.
There wasn't long between them, and I clearly liked Thor more at the time. Spoiler alert, that's not the case now. I like next week's film a lot more. This won't be this will be like bottom 5 for me. But I think what I will say is that I'll say a couple of things. Firstly, I've always called most of Marvel's output mediocre, but that's actually getting less so as we go along, because we're now at the point that of like 20 films at the time of release, and I have seen Ant-Man and the Wasp. You've got to go down to like 14th or 15th in the rankings to get to a film where you go, that's not very good. And even then, it's perfectly enjoyable. And this is perfectly enjoyable too, but it's just a little bit perfunctory. What I will say is the lead is brilliant. I mean, I genuinely, I think I've got a bit of a man crush on fucking Chris Hemsworth. Because
Really?
Wildly charismatic. I'd cast him as James Bond tomorrow, which most people would fucking slap me for. But I think,
it's making more sense the more I think about it. When you mentioned it,
it seems silly to you. Really, really sit and think about it and go, yeah, that would work. And the cast is really good, and the story's pretty good, but it's a little bit perfunctory. They had to introduce Thor. This is how they did it. It's okay. It's really fucking cheap. That really shows. I've got problems with it. It's going to go quite low down. Part of that is I'm not that in love with the Thor character anyway. I think a bit like the Hulk. I think he works better in team-ups than he does on his own. But one thing I kept forgetting to mention, and it really is worth mentioning, he's a bit pantomimey, but I still don't think villain-wise they've actually brought in anything better than Loki. I really don't. I think, for a film that I'm going to rank quite near the bottom, it produced one of the best things the series has ever done. Now, I don't think that really shows up till the Avengers. I didn't walk out of Thor going, isn't Loki amazing? I think I walked out of the Avengers going, isn't Loki amazing?
I was just say, yeah, he kind of introduced his character here and how he can manipulate others, obviously as the master of
and the
mischief.
Dark World, where he sat in the cell and he's created that illusion when he strips it away, he sat against the wall with his hair hanging down.
Brilliant.
That's like the sort of that's like the shot of Loki for me.
Yeah, it's the iconic shot, really, isn't it? I think, the Avengers, and plus this also introduces Tom Hiddleston to the world stage, to Marvel.
It's got Tom Hiddleston in it. And every time I see somebody like Rene Russo, particularly now she's older, I wonder why she's not Hollywood royalty.
Yeah, she's amazing in this film.
I think of her as like Hollywood royalty, and then I go, no, she hasn't actually earned that. She was in like a couple of Lethal Weapon films and fucking the Thomas Crown Affair. She has actually.
She looks great though for a woman of her age. She looks.
She's in some iconic films.
I'll tell you what it's like, and having seen Ant-Man and the Wasp literally last night.
No spoilers, please. Seeing this weekend.
Well, no, I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's a little bit like Michelle Pfeiffer. When you cast Michelle Pfeiffer in something now, she's Hollywood royalty because she's been around for 30 or 40 years. It's still beautiful, was beautiful then. And she's like earned this position. And I think that of Rene Russo, but actually when you sit and think about it, you go, she hasn't actually earned that, but it's still like a bit of a thrill to see her.
I think it's just because, she's had this long career and she has been in some iconic films, but I think maybe because, I don't know, you don't tend to see her on screen as much if she does TV. Maybe perhaps I don't watch the shows that she's in, or she's a family, or like all actors of her generation. She's made her millions and can now pick and choose her projects.
She made her name as a model, and I think she turned up in. Was it Lethal Weapon 3, Chris? She turned up in
3. Yeah, the 3 and 4 she's in. Yeah,
and she was about like 37 then or something. It was a bit like amazing, but because she was a model, she looked much younger. She was about 45, 46 in the Thomas Crown Affair, which would mean here she's in her late 50s. But the woman just doesn't really age, does she?
No, I mean, even like in a film like Nightcrawler, where you can see like the age on her, you still kind of like looking at her with Jake Gyllenhaal, thinking, yeah, I still would. You still like, no bones about it. I think she has like a unique look. She has one of those things where like she has a thing. She does not look like anyone else other than Rene Russo, and it's a look that I think that draws you in. It's just like a magnetic look, really. It's like, oh wow, very striking. Not in a unique, in a weird way. Not in a like, she's a bit weird, but in a she's actually
absolutely.
Generally.
So I'm giving really, really mixed messages here. I get that. But I like it, and during phase 1, when I went to see it, I walked out going, I really enjoyed that, and 2 months later I went to see, or whatever it was, I went to see Captain America, which, spoilers, I am going to be positive over, but I really didn't like it at the time, and they got very similar Rotten Tomatoes reviews, like one's got 79, one's got 77, something like that, and I was like, you're crazy, Thor is clearly the better film. Now, years on, I don't feel that way. I think there's going to be a few spots between them, and the first Avenger is going to be higher. I think it's the better film, but I don't want to be too nasty. It's got a magnetic leading man. They've managed to get a performance out of Anthony Hopkins, and I'm not taking the piss. I'm genuinely saying that's relatively rare in recent years. It's got a lot of star power in it. I mean, what's she called? Natalie Portman clearly doesn't want to be in these sorts of films, and we'll talk about that when we get to the Dark World, maybe. But they got a performance out of her. I've always loved Stellan Skarsgård, right the way back to probably Good Will Hunting, actually. I've always really liked the guy, and so I like this film, but it's very cheap. It's a little bit perfunctory, and I think if they produce this now, I think we'd go, that's not good enough. Because it's phase 1, we go, it is good enough. But I am so glad we're past the point that Marvel thought this was an acceptable amount to spend on a film. Now, there's no reason that they couldn't put out a film that costs like 80 million. But to do this, where you've got to create Asgard, and they want to build a film from scratch, you could almost double this budget to make it work. But that is as negative as I'm going to be until we get to the final act, where I can't but say some of these things again. After that, I think I'm going to focus on like character and the story and all the rest of it. So getting it out there, it's cheap, it's a problem, it's going to affect my rankings. But from here on in, there's a lot to like about it.
Yeah, I mean, I said it's in my top 5 Marvel films. It's one of the few Marvel films that actually get me emotional. that actually makes me a little bit teary.
Why do you think that is?
Hmm?
Why do you think that is?
I think it earns its character development. Like, there is, and I think this is why I like it so much. And I actually think it's, I disagree with Dave considerably a lot, but I understand where he's coming from, because it's not films for everyone anyway. But I think it's a lot more of a character piece. It's a lot more of a journey. It's a film that is, it's not necessarily a superhero film. Or comic book film, really. It's actually a film about a relationship between two brothers and a father. Ultimately, you have Thor, who wants to impress his father, but is a bit empty-headed and is kind of punished for it and banished. But you have the other brother who kind of just wants the affection for his father, always felt that disconnection, and goes about things like in the wrong way. Because ultimately, that's what it is. It's like three people who actually do. Despite what Loki is as a villain, he actually loves both Thor and Odin. It's actually it's quite a complex character as Loki, and that's one of the things I really like it. I mean, in Avengers, he's a lot more moustache twirly, and
he is.
The stuff that happens in this film.
There is so much going on in his face during this film. Even when someone else is talking, and the camera's got him in shot, and you go, "I can see this man thinking."
Yeah.
I really will, Brooke, know...
He makes you guess, like, what's the performance of the character, and what's the actual...
he might have been miscast in something like Skull Island or something, which he totally was, but this guy is really fucking talented.
Yeah, definitely.
This film shows us that. More than... I would put The Dark World alongside it, because he's, like, distraught and all that early in the film. But, like, Tom Hiddleston's a bit special in this film.
Oh, definitely. I mean, even, like, from my first watch of this film, I was, like, kind of thinking, you know what? I mean, this was back in the time, I'm not sure whether Loki's the right villain for Avengers, but I kind of really liked how interesting he was here.
We'll get to it when we get to the Avengers, because I think the Avengers is a special film.
Yeah, but this is like me preempting what before the Avengers came out.
The Avengers is a bit made by committee. It doesn't have the best opening 40 minutes, and it's a bit, you can see them sat around a table going, who should be our villain, as opposed to there being an organic story. And they've chosen Loki, and it's almost like they've chosen Loki because they've gone, this is the first of a series, and we can like ramp up from him. He's not really a big bad. But he uses facial expressions and stuff very, very well here. I think you're right to a degree that I mean, Chris Hemsworth is so good at the arrogant swagger.
Yeah,
he's got it in the bag.
I mean,
early in the film, he's walking along winking, and that could come off so cheesy, and it almost does.
It's a real skill to play like this arrogant and not be dislikable. And that's what I think.
He really does
take, like, early on, you like him, even though he is basically being a temperamental prick. And it's from being, like, a likeable temperamental prick to, like, completely having the whole world fall for under him and just be completely just a broken man. And learn his lesson, climb from that, and earn, like, the rise of Thor that he should be. And that is something quite powerful for me. And that's probably why I like it as much as I do.
It takes great skill as an actor to be able to do that as well, which I think is very important here. So they've really got the cast spot on.
All of that is valid. I think I'm going to rank it low for a few reasons. Partly, like I say, a lot of it is the money and the budget, and a lot of it is it does feel like they were sat at like Iron Man, and they've gone, who do we want to be in the Avengers? And they've gone, well, if we're looking at it, we got to have Captain America there. Let's put Thor in. And they've gone, right, let's have a straightforward hero's journey where he's an arrogant prick to start with. On paper, this is a little bit thin. This is a very straightforward hero's journey. What saves it is the three leads, and I mean the three men. I mean Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, Anthony Hopkins. Really good, isn't it? They're so good. So
plus, you have got solid support from Asgard, Dennings
And
and
I love
Horton.
I love all of them. I mean,
Kat Dennings, brilliant. She's really good comic relief in this film.
yeah, well, I love Kat Dennings anyway, but that's other reason. But like, I think
That's eye candy for Dave.
I think the point is, I have problems with Natalie Portman, but that's largely, I think, the meta narrative that I know she doesn't want to be there. I think in reality, she's actually pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't show. If she doesn't want to be here,
it doesn't show, but I know, and I can't switch off that I know. I think it's one of those films, and I'm a bit like this with The Dark World. The Dark World tends to be ranked right down the bottom. Now, I haven't rewatched it yet, but I remember quite enjoying it. So I think I'm going to be a bit counter the view on it, although the villain in it is fucking awful, and I'll say that now. But Thor and the second Thor film, are both films that I think I'm going to rank in the bottom like quarter. But genuinely, if somebody ranked Iron Man 2 at the top, I think they were mental. But if somebody ranks Thor near the top, I think I'd go, fair enough. You're getting something out of it I'm not really getting.
yeah.
And I think that's the same with this and its sequel. So I think I'm done with the negativity now. I think genuinely we're just going to talk through the film. And if there's plot points I don't like, or performances or bits I don't like, I'll say. But I think I'm done with the negatives now. That through the rest of this review, take it that like I don't like the fucking sets. I really don't, particularly on Earth, and they are major. I can't overstate how big a problem it is for me. But as we go through the plot and everything else, there's a lot to like about this. I'm going to be quite positive from here on in.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the sets, and it's almost like I kind of like, I understand the situation a bit more, and yeah, okay, maybe. But I also feel like it kind of suits it as because it's more of a personal character story, and given the fact that the nature of you coming from this big magical kingdom, it might be a creative choice to bring it down to something more smaller scale. Granted, it's probably a bit too small scale. Granted. But for me, it's not as bothersome. It's not as like ruinous for me. And maybe because I just like the characters more. Maybe.
Bullshit. I think what bothers me, Chris, is bullshit. I think what bothers me is when somebody like spends tuppence on a film, and they didn't spend tuppence here. They spent $150 million. But when somebody doesn't spend enough money on a film, and then on a commentary or so on defends the choice as being artistic. And it's like, no, fuck off, you had no money. That's what it is.
Yeah, but isn't that what they do in, like, marketing stuff, though? They can't just go, like, it's very rare you get, a commentary and go, like...
I didn't expect Branagh on the commentary to go, well, I had to do this because I was skin.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that at all. But he talked about it as though they called him in. He really makes it sound like they called him and said, Ken, come and design Thor for us. And then they've gone, right, Ken, our general idea is we're going to start on Asgard and then we're going to, move to Earth. What do you think? And he makes it sound like he, off his own bat, went, well, I tell you what, right, when they come to Earth, can we make it a cheap, tiny fucking town that no one lives in? I really just don't believe that. What I do believe is that they've gone, Ken, this is the budget. And when he's realised that, he's got two choices. He can either go to some fairly small existing town, or they can build something. And I do believe that they went with build something because he has more control over timings for filming and things like that. I do believe he saw positives in what they did. And I do believe that they made design choices with the town to mirror Asgard and stuff like that. I believe all of that. And I also understand that in the fourth film, you might look at it and go, well, we're not sure yet that we can spunk a load of money on this. But at the same time, once Thor came along, they were committed. They were doing the Avengers. Now, with the Avengers, it's going to have to be a massive plot. You're going to have quite a lot of the Hulk in it, which is expensive because every shot of the Hulk is CG. So at this point, you are committed to spending quite a lot of money. And Iron Man 2 did really well. It did something like $700 million, which relative was very, very good. So I think to pin it down to 150 is a bit tight. The Hulk cost that, and this cost that. And when we get to next week, I think they had to loosen it for Captain America. I think there were things they wanted to do in that film where they had to go. Captain America's a slightly bigger name than Thor, certainly domestically in the United States. And we have to loosen the belt a little bit, so the budget for that's a little bit higher, and it shows. So this ends up looking like the most perfunctory part of Phase 1, that it's somewhere in the middle, and they just don't have enough money for it. But I keep saying I'm going to stop now. I will definitely stop. That's enough on budget. So we
I'll just confirm. I'll just correct my earlier mistake. Obviously, the Shakespeare reference is not Crown of Thorns, because I was watching. There's actually a starfish that is eating up most of the Great Barrier Reef, only because I was watching a nature documentary the other week. The BBC recent Shakespeare adaptation was, of course, called The Hollow Crown. So apologies. I did know that in the back of my brain, but just obviously I had the nature documentary in my head first. So sorry about that, old fix.
And I also would like to add about first thoughts. I absolutely adore the score. I love the
great score, isn't it? Really enjoyed it.
The opening credits reminded me of the first X-Men film.
Yeah, it's very stylish, and it's got
how
real
the
lip
X-Men
to it.
film, you get a little bit of Patrick Stewart narration, and you get that title sequence.
I'll tell you the history of Thor and how I came to be.
Yeah, I think the score is kind of part of the reason why I tear up a little bit as well. It took some heartstrings.
This is Patrick Doyle, a Patrick Doyle score. This is Ken Branagh's longtime collaborator. For example, he did do Murder on the Orient Express, his last film.
Yep.
I'm looking through his filmography now, just looking at notable films. Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit, Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yep. All big hitters.
Goblet of Fire.
Yep. Harrison Ford.
And then it's not that big. You go back to the early bit of the century, and you've got Calendar Girls, Bridget Jones' Diaries.
All valid films, all really valid films.
Yeah, all decent, but I'm saying there's no.
Dead Again.
In that.
That was a good film. That's another Ken Branagh.
It's a Ken Branagh film.
So, it's a bit hokey, but actually that's
when you look through it, he's Ken Branagh's guy.
A bit of a guilty pleasure for me.
Yeah, he's Ken Branagh's guy, basically. He did do Donnie Brasco. That's worth mentioning.
And Carlito's Way as well. And
classic movie.
Absolutely. So it's got a good score. It does have, and it's a long way away. We're a long way from it, but eventually, when we talk to Charlie, I think we're going to try and nail this myth that modern superhero films just don't have good themes, because Marvel have got fucking tons of them. They really have.
It's just not clearly identifiable, like say a Williams Superman or something like that.
What are you comparing to? You're comparing it to one of the greatest themes of all time.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a bit more themed, suiting the movie, rather than stuff that you might go and buy the album and listen to at home. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of those. This actually with Thor, it's probably one of the first Marvel films that I did actually do that. I thought, right, I'm going to pick up that the soundtrack CD. Another Shakespeare connection, obviously scored Branagh's version of A Winter's Tale for the National Theatre, which is pretty cool, and also Cinderella. Again, which Branagh directed. So yeah, obviously they work. They're known for working together, basically.
Okay, shall we discuss this film sequentially, folks?
Let's do it. So
Let's do it.
We have the pre-title sequence starting on Earth when we introduced to the Earthlings,
which I'd kind of forgotten. And do you know what's brilliant about this? We start with the sequence where Thor is hit by their van.
Yeah.
When he's hit by the van again at the end of not again, literally the same bit, but after all the bit that led up to it, exactly 30 minutes to the second.
Oh, wow.
I checked tonight. Exactly 30 minutes to
Do you think that's coincidence? Or do you reckon
No, I think that's deliberate. I think
amazing.
That sounds too much of a coincidence.
Did you think when they were in the edit where they were just they were off by say 5 or 6 seconds? You think? And Brad was like, do you think maybe you just get that to
Yeah. I mean, I can't swear for certain. He might say, well, we were close, and bizarrely, we wanted it at 30 minutes, but had it been 30 minutes and 25 seconds, so be it. And bizarrely, it was exactly 30 minutes. Then, yeah, I mean, it might have been, but it is exactly 30 seconds. From that opening scene to where he's hit by the car again is the first half an hour of the film. I mean, I was quite impressed by that, actually.
I mean, I was wondering like what the purpose was why we're meeting these lot on Earth. Why we're going to Earth first? Why don't we just go straight to Asgard, do there, and then go along there? But I guess it's kind of, you know, if you're going to sort of like take a series from Earth to like another realm, it probably makes sense to start on Earth and then sort of like then introduce that realm. You know what I mean? It's kind of give you a starting point. Say, look, here we are. It's the universe. Here's something
Let's
else.
see how we got here. I mean,
Yeah.
it's quite a storytelling trope actually, but I never had a problem with it.
Yeah.
And also, there's some names in that van. I mean, Kat Dennings wasn't such a big star at the time, but well, she's not a massive star now. But we've seen her in a few things since.
This kind of provided a launch pad for it. I mean, as well as Hiddleston, obviously, he was known for sort of his TV roles, but I think it's kind of provided a launch pad for them both.
I'm just talking about this van for a minute.
Ah,
Those three.
sorry.
No, it's not a problem. I'm just saying, looking at where we start this film, Natalie Portman is obviously quite a big star. Now, I'm not saying she's a Jennifer Lawrence or something, but most people of that generation know who she is. I suppose she's the same generation as like a Scarlett Johansson or something. But
You got Skarsgård, who's a seasoned actor, so he's like, I've seen that guy.
Skarsgård will probably always be known first and foremost for Good Will Hunting. Although I recently saw him in the Borg McEnroe film.
I've not seen that. I want to see that. Apparently, it's really good.
It's on Amazon Prime, so I'm quite happy to give him a signing for it. I quite enjoyed it. I liked it. It's really good. He's Borg's coach in it. And Kat Dennings was probably known at this point for like the 40-year-old
Nick
virgin.
Nora's Infinite Play or something like that.
Well,
On the indie scene, really.
I knew her really for the 40-year-old virgin.
Oh yeah, that was quite funny.
I didn't know she was in that. But okay.
Well, the woman he pairs up with, who's played by Catherine Keener, she plays her oldest daughter.
Oh right, okay.
And he goes off. He takes her to like a sex education class at one point, and kind of admits he's a virgin while he's there. And in the car on the way back, he tries to play it off as a joke, and she won't have it. And she plays that scene really well, and I've always remembered her since. I don't think she's the rangiest actress in the world, but she's very sort of present in a scene, if you like. So that starts us off pretty good. But yeah, Stellan Skarsgård. What else is Stellan Skarsgård really known for? Because I think of Good Will Hunting. What else is he known for, folks?
Mamma Mia.
Yeah, I suppose that would be. I mean,
Mamma Mia too.
Well, you're laughing, but like actually, that's
true. Exactly.
Well, he's been loads of stuff. Like he's in Breaking Away, something for October.
Yes, really important.
Pirates of the
film.
Caribbean. He was in previously to that.
Yep. Don't forget he was in that series as well.
He's Girl Dragon Tattoo and things like. He works a lot with Lars von Trier, so he does a lot of like weird indie stuff. But
in terms of English speaking audiences, I would say probably Good Will Hunting. Certainly Mamma Mia, unfortunately.
And of course, he's done Scandal.
And films of that ilk.
So we're starting off.
Wasn't he in the original? What's that? Insomnia? Is it that Nolan thing?
Yes, he might have been.
Isn't he? Is he in the original of that?
Of Insomnia.
Yes, he was. Well remembered.
When would that be? About 93 or something?
97. Just looking at
97. It is.
97.
Yeah. No, he's in that. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, we're starting off pretty well, aren't we? You look at this van and you go, one of you's a big star, another one of you everyone knows, and the other one most people know.
Yeah. We're
off to a pretty good start. And one thing I do believe, and I do think it's budget driven, in that they've gone, Ken's, this is your budget, what do you want to do? But he chose New Mexico because he said the sky there was so famous. Particularly at night, and he just said you get this incredible big sky, and I believe that when I watch this sequence, and I go, that's why you chose New Mexico.
That's why it's famous for lots of westerns being filmed there as well, literally because you do have that big sky, and also obviously like Death Valley and other areas around like Nevada and California, but certainly within New Mexico as well. It's a very famous location purely for its landscape.
Yeah, I think this film generally looks really, really nice. Has some really nice shots in it. A few a few J.J. Abrams lens flare I noticed at times, but yeah.
Oh, bloody hell, so much lens flare. Jesus. And also...
But it does look actually quite pretty at times.
Lens flare, Dutch angles, bloody hell.
Dutch angles bother me. Lens flare didn't even notice.
Is Dutch angles, is that the one where it kind of tilts or goes up?
Yeah,
so it's meant to, what it is a technique. It's meant to convey like a sense of unease, or you're not quite sure what's going on. Or
But
there's
actually,
characters like showing inner turmoil.
It's never used that way. It's always used as like, aren't I interesting as a filmmaker?
Well, here, yeah, I would say obviously that this is my one flaw with Branagh in this film. It is used way too much, even just to convey, not just to convey, obviously use it to convey like characters in turmoil, or if there's something not quite right, or if there's there's villainous daring do's afoot sort of thing. But here it's just literally just Dutch angle after Dutch angle after Dutch angle, and it's like, just do it right, Branagh, come on, just do it as you would, not with Dutch angle, just literally every other scene is a Dutch angle. It's just like, fuck off, it pissed me off a little bit, to be honest. But there's like my two, obviously JJ lens flare, which is just like, I could do a runner, and also Dutch angles as well. Like I've had enough. It's like shaky cam. Very, very. It's passé now.
It was passé then. I remember
it's passé now.
It was all over
be done with it,
It was all over the reviews at the time. I don't think Ken Branagh does a bad job at all, actually. I've got no great criticism.
No, he does a really fine job.
No, it's fine, but I remember the reviews going, how many Dutch angles? And it was like, totally.
Yeah. It was like, I was watching it and like discussing it with you guys like on our private chat thread, and I was like, how many Dutch shots?
I know, and I said it was... It's not it's not ruinous. It isn't, but it's really fucking noticeable. It really is.
It's a bit annoying.
And
so.
it's not a plus. It's not a good thing.
I think when it's used well, it's a really clever effect. But I think here, unfortunately, it just suffers a little bit from overuse, and it takes you out of the film a little bit. But otherwise, fine. Shot beautifully, it looks beautifully. Just a little bit too much lens flare, which is JJ's signature mark. And just a little too much Dutch angle, I'm afraid. But apart from that, it looks good.
Yeah, you kind of also, every time you see a lens flare, you kind of want to see like a copyright mark. Just go.
Copyright, JJ Abrams.
Or just JJ appears in the bottom corner and just does a thumbs up. That's what I'd actually want.
So it looks up just as he's counting his money, going like.
Yeah, like see here where you've got like a signer in the corner, just JJ doing a thumbs up.
Yeah.
I endorse this message.
I endorse this lens flare.
And then we cut to Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, it's a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, you do get the anti-Hopkins. Let's talk about like the whole backstory. It's like introduce like all the mythology and Asgard, and it does its job quite well, I think.
The de-aging software was still reasonably good, actually. Here, Marvel have never done a very bad.
Naturally, don't you know?
Well, actually, what I would say is the de-aging looks pretty good. The only difference between then and say now is that it looks like they've used too much digital noise reduction. It looks a bit waxy, but it's much better than say X3 was.
I was gonna say X3. That's weird. It's really weird.
Or that
looks
first
unnatural.
Wolverine film, X-Men
Actually,
Origins.
it was worse in Wolverine. It was pretty bad in X3, but Patrick Stewart turned up looking like a fucking puppet. It was weird.
That looks very. Yeah, they did look waxy. Both he and Ian McKellen didn't come off well. I remember going to see that film with my friends who are big X-Men fans, and we all were like, "What?"
One day, I will slaughter the X-Men films for our listeners' entertainment.
I would like to include them in this strand, but I don't think we will. But I'm desperate to get it onto our show somehow.
I won't say all of them because part of them are really good, but when they're bad, they're really fucking bad.
They are
really bad when they get it wrong. So he looks a little bit waxy, which looks a bit digital noise reduction, but apart from that, it's not bad. It's all right. Looks okay. We've got the story of like the frost giants and all that shit.
All that crap, and and then we basically sort of go straight to get to see Asgard in all its glory, and then we see it's Thor's celebration day.
It's Thor being made King Day.
Yeah,
and he's swaggering down. He's swaggering down the aisle like Zach Brannigan.
Yeah.
I'm only surprised he's not wearing velour.
And he's tossing his hammer up in the air and catching it and
winking
and pointing at people, going like, "Hey, there you are." Hello, it's me.
It's me.
Yeah, he's basically Flash Art.
He is Flash Art, isn't he?
Am I police to see what? And just put a canoe in my pocket. Yeah, it could be overplayed, and on paper it is. If I'd read it in the script, and I don't know how the script described it, but it likely would have described him being a bit full of himself and mugging for the crowd and stuff. I think I'd have been quite worried. But there's something about Chris Hemsworth. I mean, he's not a big, if you look at the stars of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Robert Downey Jr. is a bigger star, and probably rightly so. But I remember a scene in Infinity War where he appears on the screen at the same time as Chris Evans, and I like Chris Evans quite a lot. But it was almost like a quantum leap in star power because Chris Evans appeared first, and it was like having an A-lister there, and then Hemsworth appeared, and it was suddenly like having a fucking triple A-lister appear. He sells all this stuff, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, as I said at the top of the show, like, it takes a certain defined skill to still be likable and act like a dick. It's like you could very easily just sort of like, why do I like this guy? Yeah. But the offset, what sells it is you still kind of like him. There's something about his energy that you're just like, yeah, he's a good guy, just acts like a dick, but he's fun to be around though. You can tell like he's got a good heart. That's the thing. You can tell he's well intentioned.
I must say, I wasn't familiar with this part of James Hunt's career. I remember him winning the Formula One world title, but I don't ever remember him becoming a god.
Becoming like a Norse god, yeah.
I'm a bit, Nicky Lauda's just had a lung transplant, and I was thinking about that today, and I was thinking, why didn't like James invite him to his like investiture as king? Why is Nicky Lauda not in the audience? But then that would be Daniel Bruhl, which would confuse casting with Civil War coming up. I like him here, I just do, and I'm gonna be quite. I wasn't at the time. It's The Dark World and all the Avengers films and Rush and other things. But I almost can't overstate that shot in Infinity War where Steve Rogers was on the screen and suddenly Thor appears. And it was like a quantum leap in star power. And Chris Evans is currently kind of an A-lister as well. I actually think Chris Hemsworth is a bit special in terms of like screen charisma, and I don't know if that's commonly agreed with or that's just me and my.
He literally oozes charisma.
Do you think it's just that smile he has? He does have that kind of.
Quite easy, isn't it? It's just
it's just that kind of like he kind of smiles and it really sort of charm. It's almost shit eating, but it's like at the same time. It's like, oh come on, man. Yeah.
I remember when I went to see because I like Tom Cruise and we're going to cover Mission Impossible next year.
Yeah, can't wait.
I saw Fallout last week and fucking loved it.
Oh, it's amazing! Oh my god, best action film of the year.
It is
of this decade.
Bond, take note. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it's
yes.
Sorry,
I said Bond, take note.
Oh, definitely.
There's a big debate on Facebook at the moment.
I tend to think the last three have kind of been fairly similar in that, like Ghost Protocol onwards, there's a sheet of paper between all of them. I think what pushes this over the top is I think Ghost Protocol was better than Rogue Nation, but Rogue Nation had Rebecca Ferguson, which Ghost Protocol
really good.
And
this film
and Rogue Nation had a grit, I think, as well. There was certain tangible grit to Rogue Nation.
I tell you what, Rogue Nation had the best fucking transition into the title sequence ever.
That was really cool.
The bit where they go light the fuse, and I think, why don't they do that every time? That the fuse being lit is part of the fucking scene.
Because it's become a staple now, isn't it? Especially long-running fans will remember it from the TV series.
They don't like the fuse as part of the scene, apart from that. But
no, that was clever.
But I remember years ago watching him in Vanilla Sky, which I do think is a massively underrated film. And that's just me, because most people don't like it, but I really like Vanilla Sky. I like the original Spanish version as well, but I do actually...
it's a good film. I prefer the original, but I do like the remake too.
I actually prefer the remake, because I think the plot makes more sense, because there's a few differences in plot.
Fair enough.
But they look kind of similar. Penelope Cruz plays the same character in both of them. But Tom Cruise in the first half an hour of that film, roughly, not exactly like this film, is smug. And every time he smiles, it's like, oh, you smug twat. And I quite like Tom Cruise for all the Scientology shit. As an actor, I really like Tom Cruise. He doesn't disappear into a role. It's always Tom Cruise, but I always believe the emotions that man is like exhibiting as his character. But I think the point I'm going a long way round to make is, if you go and watch Vanilla Sky, that's how you do smug wrong. In the first 20 minutes of that film, that guy is fucking insufferable. And Thor should be here, but the Hemsworth, like, star power is like, I quite like you.
You just see the Hemsworth there, you think, yeah, but I can't hate you. There's something more to you that I like, but you're just a bit cocky, you're just a bit full of yourself, but you're alright, really.
Plus,
he's God of Thunder, he's son of Thor, what do you expect?
He's not the son of Thor.
Well, not son of Thor, son of Odin, I mean. God of Thunder, son of Odin, that's what I meant, sorry.
Thor, Odin's son, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, he's son of Odin, that's what I meant, sorry.
I was about to talk about Assassin's Creed then, but I'll stop because I'll get carried away. Badumcha. It's not a fucking joke.
Oh, sorry, no, I was just reading out something elsewhere, so...
Do you do that when you're on your own? Do you read the paper and go, oh, badumcha?
Drum roll, please.
Okay, so he's about to become sort of king here. And I had to when I was watching the film earlier, I called up the Wikipedia page just to check that's what was happening, because it got interrupted and I thought Odin's still like young and, well, not young, but he's still like vital, if you like. Yeah, I was about to say virile, I didn't mean virile. Vital. He's still like well. And it is. He's about to be like given the throne, but it gets interrupted by like the frost giants.
Yeah, the frost giants come and try and steal essentially what was theirs from
Absolutely.
The battle.
I do have to make one point before we move on. Did you not get the impression Thor wanted to do his mum?
That's probably just Chris Hemsworth though, looking at
When
Rene
he
Russo.
winked at her, I was like, you saucy devil. I'd be confused if that was my mum, wouldn't you?
Or maybe Becca was right. Thor is Thor's son.
I just got my names mixed up, sorry.
Yeah. He bothered himself.
It's very hot here, you know. It's quite warm in England at the moment.
Ouroboros.
Yeah.
I heard the badumch there. But yeah, when he looked at it,
connection.
I just thought, God, I wouldn't want that as my mum. That would so confuse me. But anyway, the frost giants, this is all to do with effectively, we did see, like, I think it was 900 odd AD. We saw the frost giants tried to, like, invade Earth, and, like, Odin sorted it out. And there's been, like, a truce, a truce ever since. Now, what I found interesting about this was it was a little bit, you can leave the politics of this alone quite easily, because I don't think it's overtly political, but what clearly happens is it's a bit like the real IRA. In like the IRA in Ireland committed to peace like a couple of decades ago, but for a few years afterwards you had like the quote unquote
rebels.
Real IRA, a splinter cell, yeah. And that's what this is, and this is what... and I didn't get it at the time. At the time, I thought, well, they've invaded Asgard, and Odin's going, chill out. But actually, what he's saying is, it's only a few of their number. And what he's basically saying is, it's a splinter cell. We will not go to war over, like, a rogue element. And he's right.
I mean, I think he's right not to, like, jump the gun. It's like, okay, well, we don't know, was this actually ordered by, but was this a main, or was this like a bunch of rogue ones going ahead? We don't know yet. I'm not going to sort of like charge in on, you know, bait on assumption, you know.
But he does actually say it's a few of their number, and also when Thor and Loki, and he said Odie, that's Garfield.
No wonder he went bad, really. But
when they were kids, he was saying a wise king doesn't rush to war. And it's going to be a bit perfunctory and heavily signposted like that because it's a PG-13 film. It's going to be a little bit. The message of this film is to like engage a bit of thought first. So all the way through this little sort of prequel, a very short first act, effectively, Thor is being taught. Well, you don't go rushing in like a fucking idiot. You actually assess the situation, and if it's one rogue element, you don't do anything silly. And of course, not only is Thor's investiture as king interrupted, so he isn't the king, but he does go charging in like an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, he gets like he tosses the table over, and you also have Luke in his ear basically do this manipulation thing. We're not quite sure yet because the film doesn't like make that clear outright. It kind of eases that in gradually, but he kind of like, look, I personally think you're right, but what can you do? You know, he's doing that kind of thing. And he's got the Warriors free and Lady Sif, and they kind of, he basically convinced them, come on, let's just go and sort out ourselves, eh?
The only bit of the film that I thought was really, really Ken Branagh is where he was talking to the Warriors 3 and Lady Sif.
Yeah.
And like I say, I probably said it earlier in the episode, it's a little bit like when you see your school teacher laughing at Shakespeare, and I'm thinking, are you really finding that funny, or are you laughing to be fucking intellectual? There was a little bit of like, in the way they would all talk to each other, and that was a stiff scene, and it played stiff the first time I saw it. I saw that and just went, that's Ken Branagh wishing this was Hamlet or something.
But I do like Sif. As a character as well, I think.
It's really, really good.
Yeah, I only look at her for the articles.
No, but she does do a good job. But
she does.
Stop it!
If you're Lady Sif and would like to blow any of us, write to us and expect us to talk.
Well, Chris or Dave.
If you'd like to blow Becca through the boots crying.
If you're Chris Hemsworth and would like to come and have a date with me.
If you're Chris Hemsworth and
but Becca, Chris Hemsworth's a happy married man.
I know.
Yeah, but
if you're Tom Hiddleston, would you like to come?
He's no Roger Moore, granted, but
his wife had just had a baby with Dom.
I know. I know he's happily married. It's okay.
No, his wife is that lady from the previous franchise. I can't remember her actual name. She's a bit older than him.
Yeah, the one that's not Michelle Rodriguez.
The one that worked with Dwayne Johnson as like a cop who had like a baby with Vin in like episode 8. That's Chris Hemsworth's wife.
No, it's okay. I'm not a homewrecker really.
But yeah, anyway, so they basically sort of go to.
You aren't, because we offered you Roger Moore and you just weren't having it because he was happily
happily
married to Christina Fulstrop.
Yeah.
And plus, he's such a gentleman.
She's free now.
That some other rich gentleman can swan in and go,
I can stick on
ex-Lady Moore.
Give it a blast, literally. All right.
I mean, you have to put up with it long, would you? Really?
No.
Actually,
related
to Sir Roger Moore, I've got a bit of an event to plug at the end of the show, which, if you'll indulge me, I'll do later on.
Yeah, it's something to do with scaling a massive erection.
Yes.
Okay. So he goes off to fight the Frost Giants, and it doesn't go well.
No.
Now, the one thing I thought of when I watched him fighting was like he was, come on, give me a real fight. And it struck me as guys outside pubs, just looking for a fight, and just really looking for a real like punch up. He does come off really fucking juvenile here, and that works. That works for the film.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, is that charismatic, but like, I'm that good. Give me some, give me something that at least tests me a little bit. But yeah, he basically just they have a big fight. We see that Loki something happens when he gets touched, and there's a little head.
They grab his right. Now I think it's Volstagg, the Ray. What's he called? Ray Stevenson.
Yeah, he's really good as well.
He gets grabbed on the arm, and it leaves like effectively like
an ice burn,
frostbite for want of a better term. And when they grab Loki, he deals with it. His body deals with it all right, and as Loki is as shocked as the rest of us.
Yeah.
He's basically, because it turns out that he's half mutant, half ice creature. Was an ice creature in part of his makeup.
Yeah. Spoilers, but
spoiler alert, people.
But yes,
this film came out in 2011. If you've not seen it, get on it.
And Frandel's been injured. The guy looks a bit like Errol Flynn.
Yeah, he does have Errol Flynn-esque.
He's recasting the next one. Although you couldn't tell, they cast someone who looked really similar.
Yeah,
that was a bit weird. That's a bit strange.
And do you know what the sad thing is, though? I don't think anyone cared.
No, I must say he was a very kind of minor character. I mean, he looks very dashing, and he's got great makeup and a great physicality to him. But it's like, a shame we don't see him again.
Yeah,
also,
we don't really see much of the Warriors 3 in general, really.
No, we don't, which is a shame.
Stuart Townsend was meant to play this role.
Yeah, it's a bit of an
and originally, Zachary Levi was actually meant to play it in this film and was had to pull out. And he's in the sequel, so basically they ended up with it's a bit like Mark Ruffalo. They ended up with their original choice, but just by a circuitous route.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's another thing for Stuart Townsend, because he was originally going to be Aragorn, wasn't he, in The Lord of the Rings?
He filmed some time as Aragorn, and they looked at him and just went, he's too young. And they called in Vigo, and Vigo's first scene is that sword fight. Where Frodo gets stabbed in the shoulder by the white. I was about to say White Walkers. That's not.
No, wrong series.
But yeah, he gets stabbed in the shoulder. That sword fight there was almost improvised because it was his first day on set.
You gotta be gutted if you Stuart Townsend, wouldn't you? Be like, fucking hell.
Right.
Yeah, he's not even with Charlize Theron anymore. He can't even go home and like cheer himself up.
Oh.
Okay, so. Where do we go from here? He gets basically they all get taken back to Asgard, and Odin goes crazy bonkers with his drilling sex, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he gets really pissed off. Yeah,
basically sort of comes down, and he tries to kind of cool things over, but like is it Laufey, the ice giant king?
I can't remember his name.
Laufey, yeah, is having none of it. So he goes like, "All right, fine, well, sod ya."
Fiore, can't remember his name actually. Laufey, yeah.
Laufey, definitely. Yeah, I must say, there's a really underrated British cast. We've got Colin Fiore,
Thor,
Hopkins, whose name I forgot. Yeah, Thor. Hello, loves. Tom Hiddleston, Idris Elba,
Alex Ferguson,
Ray Stevenson,
Ryan Giggs.
But yeah, no, really good, strong British cast in this film, playing, blinking heuristic roles.
Playing with each other.
Or roles that buried underneath a mound of makeup there. I had to sort of look at who played Laufey and was like, oh my god, really?
Whose mound was it?
Who else can we have?
Okay, so he gets stripped of his powers and basically fired to Earth, which is basically the first half hour of the film, which is basically puts him back being hit by that van in New Mexico. Yeah.
And also Odin kind of whispers something into the hammer, and then throws it.
Says, "Earn this."
Yeah. Essentially, it's like...
He directly quotes Saving Private Ryan and says, "Earn this." He doesn't, but that's the gist.
Yeah.
So you can only pick it up if you're worthy.
Mm.
And then throws that to Earth as well. You think, why don't you just put it on the side? Just put it down.
Well, it's to give his son the chance to come back. Earn yourself, earn your worthiness to be able to come back.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so he's sent to Earth, hit by a van, and ends up in hospital as Donald Blake, which was kind of Thor's alter ego in some of the comic runs, I believe. I've never read.
I think that's a bit of a nice nod.
Yeah,
it's a definite nod, but I can't claim to have read any Thor. I haven't.
I'd like to go back to the comics and check it out, actually, because when my late granddad, my dad's dad, sort of passed away a few years ago now. I think my uncle, Dad's brother, has got his collection, but he's got a lot of the old Marvel comics. I think most of, if not all of the Thor comics. Personally, I've not seen them. I would like to go and have a look because I've not seen them, sadly. And that's why this one was also a bit of a personal connection for me, which is quite nice. But so I think my grand didn't get to see this because he passed away in 2012. But I sadly I don't think he saw this film.
I'm so
which is a
glad
shame.
It's Thor.
But yeah, I would like to go. I would like to go and have a look at those comics actually. So I might get in touch.
I'd be so upset if we were sat here and you're desperately trying to defend Superman 4 because your dad liked it or something. It's just like, at least you can take a critique of this film, but Thor's hardly terrible. It's okay. So he ends up in hospital.
We introduced like a bit of comedy as well because there's the fish out of water element where he's basically sort of still acting as if like, how dare you strike the might, and then gets like knocked out by something like a taser or. He
does have. I saw a meme the other day. Thor has a problem with like windshields and glass.
Yeah.
Because he hits one in Infinity War as well. If you actually look at Thor, he has a tendency to smash into walk into windows and stuff.
Is there like a compilation video on YouTube of it or something?
I don't know.
Probably. I'm sure there's a supercut somewhere.
It was pictures at the time, but that's the gist. So yeah, he's how dare you, and of course they eject him in the ass as well, and your ass showing it. It's hardly like it's not godlike, is it?
No,
it's not the most dignified.
Plus you hear that sort of like screeching against the window sound where he's like his face up pressed up against it.
That's quite funny though.
The phone
that was funny.
This film is really good. I know.
It reminded me a little bit of Die Another Day.
Later on, when he walks into the town to like fight that fucking plot device near the end,
it is like a big metal plot device.
I think that's dreadful. The third act of this film is not very good, but Marvel took years to get third acts right. Or to get third acts right consistently, because you could argue it with the Avengers, I guess, but like the third act of this film's pretty shit. But I remember the Foley work being like really good, his footsteps and stuff like that, and you thought that they wouldn't have captured that at the time. They wouldn't have captured that natively, and they've actually like done that pretty well. So yeah, he's in hospital, tries to get out. Then what?
They basically sort of try to find him again, don't they? Because they realise, hang on, They at first when they dropped him off the hospital, they just thought he was just some random that happened to be there, and then they kind of like look back on the video evidence and sort of say, "Oh shit,
they can see a guy in the Bifrost."
Yeah. So they go, oh, "Shit, I think he's actually like a piece of evidence now." So
what were they? Remind me what they were researching.
Science and shit.
Right,
I don't know.
I could not.
Is that a technical term?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be something like lots of like dimensions, and I would have thought, and something along those lines. I'll be honest, as much as I love this film, I actually don't know, but then partly because I don't care, because it's just science and shit.
Science and shit.
Okay.
It's just that's pretty much how you can explain it anyway. But yeah, they go back to find him, and they realise, oh shit, he's already escaped, and then they do the gag of him like, oh, hitting him again with a car without you noticing. So that's quite good. That's great. And then so that's now they're there. Where are we now?
I think what else? The local sort of population are trying to, because basically I think it's about 50 miles outside this shitty town. They
I love that town.
Well, to visit, yeah, but as a film set, it's like you might as well just scream, "We have no money."
It's like a western. That's what it's like, an old-fashioned western.
Yeah, but it was used for westerns.
All
and
westerns.
Stuff. But with
all
westerns,
the westerns.
Yeah, but with westerns, you expected to like ride into towns that like had 75 people living there. Doesn't really work for this, but there you go. Just outside the town, like Mjolnir's landed his hammer, and they're all trying to like pull it out. I know that's part of the plot.
And you got Stanley cameo. You also have like what's going on up in Asgard, because then you have Loki
confronting his dad and just saying, "You're not my dad." Well,
I mean, this is like part of the one where his performance is quite complex because there's part of you think, okay, which part of him is being manipulative and which parts are being genuine? Because there's a moment where he's like, where he basically screams, "Tell me, like, why?" When he realizes why. That seems genuine.
What makes him possibly the best villain, or the best antagonist, or the best anti-hero, or however you want to say it, that Marvel have ever had. And I know there's a lot of hype around Thanos now, and I think that's pretty justified, actually. I think Thanos is really good, and he's clearly got a level of power Loki doesn't convey, because Tom Hiddleston's a bit reedy and all the rest of it. But at the same time, there's so much complexity to this character, and Tom Hiddleston can play all of it. He can play, like, he comes off a little bit sort of cold and smarmy. Well, no, cold and smarmy don't go together as terms. But sometimes he comes off as a bit cold. Sometimes he comes off as
calculating.
Sometimes, yeah, that's it. And sometimes he comes off as like pretty charming.
Yeah.
So I think he's really, really good in this.
In terms of the character, he is, because he's like Loki being the god of
but
mischief,
we're not.
isn't he? So.
It's not like watching Emperor Palpatine, where you're watching a pantomime villain, and you're just enjoying watching him hoodwink everybody. Yeah. With Loki, we genuinely don't always know when we're being hoodwinked as well.
No, exactly. I think that's the whole point, isn't it? So that's quite good.
Absolutely, he shows some emotion, and you go, "Is that real?
Is that real, or is it fake? We don't know." That's kind of just real,
But his father collapses.
Tantamount to his talent, really testament to his talent there. And I've got another Shakespeare link with Hiddleston and Shakespeare coming up at the end of the show. Yeah.
So his father collapses, basically needing to hibernate. Is that fair enough to say?
It's kind of one of the things. It's like I guess it's played like as a heart attack, but then it's just like they just sleep it off for an X amount of time if they do wake up. That's what I think that's what they call it. I don't know.
Okay.
So and essentially he basically becomes king by default.
Yeah, and we got a load of fish out of water stuff like Thor having a drink and smashing the cup.
Yeah.
Another!
Yeah, I quite
another
like.
smash.
Yeah.
Thor going into a pet shop and asking for a horse, which is quite funny.
Do you want a cat?
Yeah, but you get all the little shots of the little pussy cats and stuff, and then he says, I need a horse!
As brazen as can be. And it's just like, well, we don't sell horses. Well, give me something big enough to ride.
Yeah. We actually see the very last moment of Thor's arrogance, but we'll come to that in a minute. It's literally delineated that you go, that's the last moment of arrogance we see from him. What else? He kind of like bonds with Jane a bit.
Yeah.
Explains to her that like magic is science you don't understand yet.
That's afterwards. I mean, she takes it to the hammer. He overhears like the stuff that they've heard. So they agree. He agrees to. Well, he basically says, "Well, I must leave you because I need to go and find the hammer." And they go, "Okay, well, good day then." And then they go back and realise that S.H.I.E.L.D. had taken all their shit. So Jane basically gets in the van, and that's where I need a horse bit, and she picks him up, and they go together to where S.H.I.E.L.D. of like basically complex surrounded by.
And he sneaks in. Yeah.
Yeah, and
we get introduced effectively via cameo to Hawkeye, which was in the reshoots. He wasn't there to start with, but it was in the reshoots.
You can kind of tell that though.
You can. You totally can, because every shot of him is totally isolated from everything else. That's the last bit of arrogance we see, because Thor really swaggers up to this thing.
Yeah. I mean, he has a fist fight with a lot of people, with the guards, and he's like...
right before he does it, if you're big, fought bigger.
Yeah.
There's still loads of arrogance there, and then he swaggers over to the hammer, and when he can't do it, it's the one film I can think of where someone screams up at the sky where I don't want to vomit, because they go, actually that works because his father is up there, and he's not screaming no, he's actually just kind of a bit howling, and he's crying as well. That's the last bit,
and it's completely defeated as well. Like it's just like, fuck, what do I do? That's
the last bit of arrogance we see from Thor in this film. Totally, I think anyway.
No, because you basically because in the next scene he's basically taken aside, like being interviewed by Coulson, who it was nice to actually see get a larger substantial role here. You think, given the fact that he's basically who's the actor's name? I forgot now. Is it Greg Clark? Yeah,
Greg Clark or Clark Gregg.
Yeah. He basically plays Coulson as like
Mark Martin or Mark Johnson. One of the two.
Basically as a nerdy fed, but here he kind of does come across well as like a genuine agent, like as a I'm a someone who with seniority and is professional, and he's like interrogating Thor's not giving him much, so he leaves the room to come back, and there's Loki in reflection of the mirror. And
that's really clever. I do like that scene a lot. Also, on a side note, I like how Coulson's character is built up. Like, obviously, he's kind of made more of a move, and then obviously in the Avengers movie, he's like the ultimate nerd with his,
Captain America,
with his card collection of Captain America as well. And then obviously when we get to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's kind of revealed that he's actually a badass. So I do love how Coulson is kind of built up and built up and built up throughout these films. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, and again, I think this is like another knock on Thor. Obviously, he's completely defeated, and it's a bit more of an emotional punch because he basically sort of Loki goes to basically tell him, "Look, father's dead. You're banished. I can't risk."
And I'm king, and I'm getting my dick washed every morning by 3 women in the. Oh no, that's coming to America.
Yeah, I was going to say just like Eddie Murphy. And yeah,
Is
so
your queen to be?
like there's nothing you can. Basically, he's laying on the gill, and Thor is just there's really sense of like completely just heartbroken, but but as you said, Dave, like he's not. He's already coming around, like sort of like being humbled, like he says, "Thank you for coming to see me." This is a little bit of a guy's just completely just changed now, like completely. There's something kind of really, and you can see you can almost see how Loki himself isn't entirely like he doesn't do the sinister ha 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 thing. He kind of looks as if sort of say like I'm doing this for your own good.
When I think of sort of pantomime villains in these types of films, and I mean big films, big franchise films, I can't help thinking of Palpatine, and he's not that. He's not that. There's more nuance there.
Yeah.
Now, as time goes by, we're in on the joke, if you like. We know what Loki is. It's still a little bit shielded from us in that, like, we're never quite sure if he's playing or not. But we at least know going forward that he will play, whereas we didn't know here, and they did kind of try to keep it from us.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, there's no, think about it, there's no incentive for him to even tell him that. I mean, that's essentially what he's doing. He's doing a block, basically. Don't come back, but have a life here.
Have a life here.
Yeah. End of the day, look. You have my.
I think he even describes the throne as like the heavy burden.
Yeah.
Has passed to me, so it's like I'm dealing with it. Yeah, but it plays okay. I mean, at this point, I'm not even sure. I was completely sure that he was the villain. Really, it was kind of hinted at with the Warriors 3, although the Warriors 3 do come to Earth to get Thor.
Yeah, they do suspect Loki, or more particularly Sif does. And yeah, so you kind of...
but she has the superpower of being fit, Chris.
She does. But she's more charismatic than the Warriors 3, though, to be fairness. But...
One eats a lot, one looks like Errol Flynn, and the other one...
Let me get this right, Chris. You're saying you'd rather do her than Ray Stevenson.
Guilty.
Okay. That's some hard-hitting opinion there, Chris.
That's a hot take,
Fresh
isn't
off
it?
his year as Batman, he's going to relax by
He's
not doing Ray Stevenson.
He's finishing off his year as Batman and starting it as Bond.
By doing women. And not the Punisher.
Yeah.
No.
But ultimately, it's just like another complex villain thing of like, even though he's a villain, he's showing a bit of mercy towards his brother. It's like, it's not like, look, I could just not give a fuck and just leave you here, or I could come down and just kill you.
Or he could not bother and not say anything.
Yeah, exactly. But he comes down to look, have a life, move on. Almost like sort of just like basically giving him closure. Even though it kind of like it's like the extra knife going in, but that's another scene that makes me go, oh god, that's quite a. And then Skarsgård comes in and basically sort of like, yeah, he's one of mine. Eric Silver comes in and basically says, yeah, he was upset, he was drunk, whatever. They don't believe him, but they decide to sort of like let him go and tail him anyway. And then basically they go to a bar, get drunk, listening to Foo Fighters.
Well, haven't we all? Probably.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so basically they're at the bar and he basically sort of says, look, I don't know if you're conning us or generally crazy.
Yeah, because Eric Selvig has been going into like kids, bookshops and picking up kids' books that refer to Thor and Thursday,
it's like his childhood
Thursday.
kind of thing.
And he's like, this is just the most obvious like lie he could tell. He's just picked this thing out of a kid's book,
Hmm.
Yeah.
And basically, so look, and I've seen the way Jane looks at you. Do me a favour, leave, just get out of here, And he kind of like, they kind of agree, but they end up getting absolutely smashed. And they go back to Jane's van, and that's when you have the scene where Thor's explaining to Jane about like science's superstition that we not yet know kind of thing.
Well, this is kind of throwaway, but at the same time, you've got to remember what a risk this film was. Because we've had an Iron Man film, which was in itself a risk, but by the time we come to the sequel, it's not. The Hulk is kind of a known quantity, so we're now broadening out. We're leaving Earth. We're introducing like magic. We're introducing gods. This is a much riskier film than perhaps I talked about in sort of my opening thoughts on it. And what Marvel are really good at is making the extraordinary ordinary. That you throw a load of magic in and you surely would get... It's a bit like Live and Let Die, where suddenly there's this fucking illusionist in it and you go, that doesn't work, surely. But Marvel are very good at just like throwing away a line where you go, okay, fair enough. They've just gone, basically, think of it as science you don't understand.
Yeah.
And you just immediately go, well, fair enough.
That's the way you explain supernatural anyway, even at the most grandest extremes.
It's something like we can't explain it. There probably is an explanation, but we can't explain it.
Because that's what science is. It's just the explanation of how things are, how things work, what things are.
So if you can't explain it, then science hasn't explained it. Which technically makes magic is something science it hasn't yet explained.
Exactly.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you stop and think about it, you go, yeah, well, that doesn't make sense.
You learn shitloads as Batman. No wonder you were fighting no crime and shit. You were sat in the Batmobile reading this shit on Wikipedia, weren't you?
Yeah, I was just like pondering like the mysteries of the universe, going like, I don't know, what's that about? Like, but meanwhile, like people just get
meanwhile, the Joker's going fucking.
I'm like Argyle in Die Hard, where like shit's going on behind me, and I'm just like dicking around on my phone, going like, hey.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I think there was your problem, wasn't it?
Probably.
Crime, thinking of Argyle from Die Hard.
Doesn't everyone?
Alright, fair enough. No wonder this went really, really fucking wrong. Crime dropped in my year as Batman. We're gonna have to see how Becca gets on next year.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, how was Batwoman? I don't know if there is a Batwoman.
No, it's Batman at 35. We've decided.
I can't be that bad.
You're gonna have to wear a corset or something.
Yeah, you're gonna have to put on a codpiece.
Yeah, put some socks down your fucking tights.
I have a bad throat all the time. I can't
and then you're gonna have to be like Rachel.
Well, you can do like the Affleck thing of like the voice box.
Yeah, that would
be
Rachel.
Rachel.
I am not Stephen Hawking.
That would be if Stephen Hawking.
You sound like a darling. Exterminate.
Okay, now what? Where do we go from here? So he's totally like fucking wanting to go to the Bone Zone with Jane.
Yeah, definitely.
The Warriors 3 have headed down to him.
Yes, because they make a deal with Heimdall, who basically is like, because since then Loki's been to see the Frost Giants make a deal, and and Heimdall, he's basically hid himself, and Heimdall's like smells a rat basically. So they go to him, and he basically goes like, well, I don't care.
How can you watch this fucking film and go and look at Idris Elba and go, that's the man we want as James Bond? You have Chris Hemsworth in the same film, and you've gone, no, this old guy. Fucking hell. Anyway,
I must admit there was a really beautiful like sort of shot like with Idris Elba. It was more like in his eyes, when Thor's like trying to lift a hand when failing, and you sort of just see like the reflection of
the eyes.
And
no, Idris Elba's great. I just can't see him as James Bond, and he's too fucking old
no,
now.
I know, but I just think that was such a
nothing to do with his colour, by the way. It's mainly he's too old.
And
his screen presence is a bit too like
an older sort of Bond film. I think he would be ideal now. But I do love him. He's one of my favourite actors. Luther is a brilliant series.
Yeah, exactly. Watch Luther. That's not James Bond.
I know,
Luther, isn't it?
Luther. Listeners, if you're in the UK and check it out, if it's on any of that series, or I think if it's on Netflix, go and check out Luther.
It would be like casting Dennis Waterman as James Bond.
But would Daniel Craig make a good Luther?
Oh, no. I don't think he would. I'm sorry.
Don't know. I haven't watched Luther, so I couldn't tell you. But
you got so good, so good.
It was alright.
Quite gory though. It's unexpectedly gory for me.
Oh, it's gory. I'm not interested.
But hang on a minute. That's Becca saying that. That means someone fucking.
There's a little bit of blood.
Be fuck all, wouldn't it? It's Becca.
A little bit of blood, not too much.
It's so gory. All right, you cut your eyelid. All right. Then what?
Gory.
So they turn up to sort of come and get Thor. Then what?
Basically they come and he basically said, look, I can't, my father's dead. And he's like, no, your father lives, and blah, blah, blah. So basically realised, oh, well, that was bullshit then.
Alright, are we at the fucking shitty CG fucking metal plot device yet?
The Destroyer?
Yeah.
I quite like the Destroyer.
I thought it was pathetic. I really thought this was just like, we've got to give him something to fucking do. I thought it was terrible, genuinely. I think the third act of this film is actually fucking laughable. Mainly because it's focused on this shitty little town, which is too cheap anyway.
Yeah,
which
that's probably what it is for you, isn't it?
I said I wasn't going to mention it to Act 3, but you can't avoid it in Act 3. There's a floating shot, like there's an above shot of the whole town, and you go, there's literally not enough room for anyone to live there. It's too fucking tiny. And then he fights this fucking ridiculous plot device. I thought it was fucking laughable. It was just like, we have to prove he's learned something, so just give him something to do. And because he's a god, it's got to be something fairly hard. That's it. I thought it was really bad. But having said that...
I thought it was fine. I mean, I thought it did its purpose, but anyway.
Exactly. If you look at the whole film and just go, well, what did he need to do? Did he do it here? Fair enough, yeah.
But you have to introduce, like, a genuine threat. Because the whole idea is it's more than like what the Warriors 3 can deal with, but it's like okay, you've got to care. You've got to care. That's the problem with Marvel at this stage. They just went, here's a fucking villain. You know what I mean? And it's just like this thing, and it's just like, who gives a shit? I really wasn't. Well, I do agree with like, who gives a shit, but like I'm not really giving a shit about the Destroyer. I'm giving a shit about Thor. I think it serves. Yeah, I think that's the caveat. It serves what the film needs to do. So maybe I'm being too harsh. It's like at the end of the day, the Destroyer is basically a tool. I don't give a shit about essentially what it is.
There's no need to insult the man.
No, but it's not. It's essentially like a weapon that Loki is essentially using. Yeah. So that's what the Destroyer is. It's like it's almost if Tony Stark went evil and made a robot and was just like, right, do that. Do you know what I mean? It's like it is just an item essentially. So it does not like a character per se. But I more care about what Thor is doing right now. What's happening with Thor, and when the thing hits the really small, cheap looking town,
in the same way that the Ironmonger did in Iron Man. All of this serves what the plot needs, and even like the Hulk fighting a bigger villain in like the Incredible Hulk. They always work for what the plot needs. It's okay, but I can't say I'm fucking thrilled looking at this really shit cheap town and watching this guy fight a plot device. But overall, it works. It does work. I can't be too harsh, but I can't be too thrilled either. Particularly as the standard of Marvel villain on average has improved. You go back to this and you go, really? They thought that was up to snuff? But yeah, it's okay.
So basically, from the get-go, you have Thor basically saying, "Look, I'm no use to, but I can help people get out of it," which is like completely polar to what you would normally say. So once the Warriors 3 have a go, essentially taking them out, but doesn't really work. Thor realizes that it's Loki basically holding a grudge, so he just does the thing a lot. He basically does the "I'm going to sacrifice myself" thing. And this is the bit that actually makes me tear up a little bit. This is the bit where I might go, oh.
Where he's hit and smashed to the ground.
Yeah, I go, oh.
No, I'm not laughing at your promise. I'm just saying, is that the bit?
No, it is the bit where it is just that kind of. It's probably the bit just before that. It's more like the guy just basically sort of saying, "Look, don't hurt these people. Your beef is with me. Take it out and be done with it." And just like seeing from his progression from where he was at the beginning of the film to someone who would go really humbly generally mean that.
Yeah.
It's quite like, oh, that's quite.
He is now ready to die for a cause. It's not about getting the hammer back, and I have to give the film some credit for that, because all the way through the film he just wants Mjolnir back, and wants his rightful place back. Now, you can play it being a nice guy and everything. At this point, he's almost forgotten it. And the film has to do that. It has to go as far as convincing you. He just wants
to do the right thing at this point.
Yeah, it has to convince you Thor has gone past even thinking about that. Mm. And that's quite a difficult thing to do. And I do buy that it's achieved that. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's probably why I like it so much. Yeah. Sorry, Becca.
I would agree there. So.
And I must admit, Loki does kill him. Well, I'm not sure whether it's always just to destroy, basically just been doing what he normally does anyway. I don't know. Because it's almost like or it could be like a Loki kind of like, fine, whatever. Because I don't think Loki actually wants to kill Thor. But anyway, he basically kills Thor, and then the hammer goes like, "Oh, I'm sensing honor," and then comes. And this is the one bit of the film I do find, oh god, this is really cheesy. This bit's really cheesy. This bit's just really, really, really cheesy. And it's just down to like Natalie Portman's like, "Oh my god." It's that kind of thing that makes me go like, oh, fuck's sake.
Typical, you
had me, and then you just pushed it to just.
Just Natalie, go and work with Darren Aronofsky. The only person as pretentious as he is.
Black Swan is an amazing film, by the way.
I love Black Swan, but Mother is
I don't.
Mother
is a short film. Is it never made?
I've honestly, ever since what's it called, Requiem for a Dream, which is frankly nowhere near as good as its fucking press anyway.
I've only seen that once, and I think I will never see it again.
No, I know. Well,
in contrast,
honestly, the only film I've really, really liked of his since is The Wrestler. And even then, it was more the performances than the film. I think he's really pretentious. I don't even bother with him anymore. The last film of him I watched was Black Swan, and I kind of liked it, but it was really up its own arse as well. And when I looked at Natalie Portman in it, I thought, no wonder you don't like fucking like Star Wars films and that. This is
There's completely different ends of the creative spectrum.
This is the bollocks you want to make. You want to be thought of as an artist. I like The Wrestler. Black Swan was bearable, but I don't like Aronofsky. He's a pretentious twat. You go and watch something
Don't see Mother, Dave. Don't see Mother.
Oh, you go and see even Back to the Fountain. You just go like, you really think you're an artist, and you're nowhere near.
Well, The Fountains are quite interesting anyway, just because of its source material.
Yeah, but the film's shite.
Wrestler was quite good. I've not seen Mother, but I am aware of it being a Marmite movie.
I'm done with it.
I mean, what Dave has just said kind of describes Mother. I mean, it's like it's someone who just thinks they're just really, really clever. Like I'm going to really sort of Like I'm going to really sort of dig it into Christianity, but really it sounds like it sounds like an essay written by an A-level student up their own arse. Like he's not really. He kind of like he basically kind of like in a really kind of. It's like, okay, if you want to critique religion or Christianity or whatever, fine. You know, a lot of people have, but it is such a dismissive kind of like, I'm going to do it from this perspective. I'm not even going to try and understand. And
I think a lot of people
like why people do it. It's just like, oh, well, you're already idiots, aren't you? It's like, no.
But I think a lot of people are kind of they think of him as a prestige filmmaker and a smart filmmaker, so they feel like they've got to like appreciate this stuff. So when Aronofsky makes a film, a lot of people whose opinion I respect to some degree, like flood social media with what an amazing film. And I'm thinking, I'm honestly thinking, do you really think that, or are you almost conditioned to like think it? I think he's fucking unbearable. And like I say,
I'd fuck Daniel Craig too.
But not to rub it in, but I'd have left him for James Bond too. You smug twat.
But anyway,
while you're there being smug and artistic, I'll be sucking off Daniel Craig.
Yeah. So anyway, back to Thor. So yeah, basically this is probably the one bit I just generally go, oh, okay, right, let's get this bit over with. But Natalie Portman does give Chris Hemsworth really good fuck eyes, really good general like.
I did wonder what you were going to say at the end of that sentence, Chris.
she does like when he's in his Thor outfit and he's like, that's a good look. She does look like I'm ready to fuck anytime.
It's not a good look either. It doesn't. It really isn't. That outfit doesn't look amazing. It looks better in later films where they like lengthen his hair and do different things with him, but it doesn't look great here.
When his stubble looks genuine.
Then in Ragnarok where they chop it all off.
Yeah, but even that works. In this film, it looks like he's won it in a prize. He's won it in a raffle or something.
Yeah, but just the whole like, oh my god thing would be, it's just a bit too overstated. Like, you spent time with the guy, he's basically told you all these things, you'd be like, oh, so it is true. That'll be the general reaction. Be like, after everything you've seen, you would be like, oh right, so there is. Yeah, he's not bullshitting now.
He's fighting in a town with a population of 3. That doesn't really fucking like give it that grandiosity.
But anyway,
he's now Thor.
He's now Thor again, and he takes out the destroyer, and then that's done. And then basically he goes back to Asgard to take care of Loki.
When you say take care of him, do you mean like
caress him and give him a good hug? Meanwhile, Loki's plan of essentially, you think the whole setup of the plan is like, right, kill my dad and don't let me look accountable, and then I'll rule Asgard in the typical evil sense. But actually, what he really wants to do is earn his dad's respect, and instead he sort of gets Laufey to try and kill him, and then turn up and go like, "Oh no, I'll be the hero. I'll save the day."
Yeah,
and it's quite like,
couldn't you just learn to like fix cars or something? That would have been much easier.
You think, but this is like
this is not mythology.
Or shag someone your dad fancies. Like, well done, kid.
Would that actually work? I don't think it would.
I don't know. When we say someone your dad fancies, we mean like age appropriate. We don't mean fuck pension.
Like fuck your mum. Hang on, wait. That's not what I meant.
That's Greek mythology, isn't it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so
wait for Assassin's Creed Odyssey on that basis.
Oh God!
So basically,
awful film version of an amazing game, bloody hell.
So basically, he just wants to make his dad proud, and he does this by saving his life, and then goes right. I'm gonna destroy Planet Frost Giant.
Yeah.
And Thor comes in, and they have a bit of a tussle. And I mean, I can tell that Dave's not thrilled about the whole third act thing. I think it's fine. The thing I like about it is, again, it's the extra sacrifice of Thor destroying the Bifrost, essentially cutting off ties to Earth. Albeit, though, not really, because we know Avengers happening. It's kind of gets retconned to a certain degree. But like within the moment, there is a certain sense of like another bit of worthy sacrifice where it's like, shit, okay, well, I have to do the right thing here, and that's another plus point for me as well. And another interesting thing, Loki, rather than go like typical no, don't do it, or or the typical sort of villain response, he pleads more of emotional things to him. It's like saying like, no, you'll never see her. What are you doing? What are you doing? And it comes across as a lot more genuine as well. It's like not like I'm trying to be manipulative here. Like almost like he actually cares about him. That's another aspect I like about it. But yeah, Thor basically sort of destroys the Bifrost. And
we're just waiting for the medal ceremony where like Chewie doesn't get one.
Chewie doesn't get a medal.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that, isn't it? It does feel that way. So
no, Well, it does look a bit like a Death Star, doesn't it?
It's all right. I remember I checked out by then, and I didn't even watch this bit tonight. I'd got to gone back to Asgard. That'll do.
To be fair, it is a classic story, and also you've got Norse mythology, and also like Star Wars is like one of the great sort of like Western storytelling. It's all kind of links into each other, doesn't it?
It's just I know. It's
in
just
terms of Western and European storytelling.
It's okay. I didn't expect this film to reinvent the wheel. I'm not angry with it, but I wasn't that bothered. I didn't care by now.
Face bothered.
Yeah. So basically, you got like Odin wakes up from his god sleep.
Odin sleep.
Odin sleep. Yes, and.
That's great. I love that name.
And he's hanging on to Thor as they're like falling off, and Thor's hanging on to Loki, and Loki's like pleading to Odin, saying, "Look, I tried to do this for you, father," and she's like, and Odin kind of looks at him disapproving, and then Loki just lets go. He's like,
"I want my help too."
Yeah, he basically sort of
you burn me.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, again, it's like another thing of like Loki's an interesting villain, isn't in that aspect. It's like he's looking at his father, he just wants approval. He still doesn't get it, so he just like, all right, I'm checking out. See you later.
Yeah, he's still going to cause havoc.
Well, yeah, we find out later, but for now he's apparently dead, and yeah, and then we get the closing of the film where, if everything's all kind of trying to get back to normal, Thor's not king yet. He feels like
it's laundry day.
Yes, it's laundry.
It's a good wash.
Friday, so they go and see the new cinema releases.
Thor is approaching Odin and is basically saying, "Look, I've still got a lot to learn. I just want to make you proud." And it's like,
he says,
you already made me proud, son. It's
fat
like,
chance, you're blonde and metrosexual. Fuck off.
Yep.
And
I was nearly in Tomorrow Never Dies, That's what he should have said.
Of course you were.
That's what he should have said.
So was his brother.
All right, Becca, we'll just let that one go.
I'm only joking.
No idea what you're on about. Carry on.
And basically goes to where the Bifrost used to be, where Idris Elba is basically sort of standing around, not guarding anything, but is on watch and asks about Jane. He says like, yeah, she's looking for you, and you see like them working together, and then credits, and then you get to hear Foo Fighters again, and there you are. That's 4.
I know, and then the post credits is Dr. Selvig sort of being controlled by Loki somehow.
I think that's worth a look.
Which kind of gets retconned in the Avengers anyway, because we see him getting sort of taken over by him there. But yeah,
I think that's a really cool effect. They kind of have that blue glint in their eyes when they know they're being controlled. And it's good to see more of Hawkeye as well, who obviously we mentioned earlier. He gets a cameo.
I would have guessed. I mean, I can't remember what exactly happens in Avengers in terms of that, but I think you kind of get the idea that Loki's just basically sort of manipulating, like, he hasn't got control over himself, but he's kind of like whispering in his ear without him knowing, almost kind of thing.
It's all to do with the Tesseract, isn't it? I think.
Something about a cube of power.
Very much later on, we will. By the time we get to like Infinity War, we will like be able to like tell you where all the Infinity Stones were and where they came from. We will like map it all out, but the Tesseract's like one of them.
Yeah,
we'll do like a big Yggdrasil, but for Infinity Stones rather than from the 9 planets.
Yeah. Oh, we'll
the
write,
Nine Worlds.
I'll write it all down the week we record because it is quite easy to chart where they come from and stuff.
Sure.
So,
We'll do a diagram, Venn diagram.
so final thoughts, folks.
I'll go first very quickly because I've got an awful lot to say. It's not a bad film. It's just like I say, a little bit cheap, and I feel awful keep saying that, but it's true and it's a problem. A little bit perfunctory, a little bit basic hero's journey, but there's a pretty special leading man here. Anthony Hopkins is making an effort. Loki's an all-timer. I wish there'd been more Rene Russo, but that's mainly because I'm a dirty old man. I really like everybody in it. It's decent. It's going to rank really low, though. It is. I can't dress that up. It's one of the least special of the Marvel films, and it's one of those that if I had to lose any of the solo ones, I'd lose this. If you said to me you've got to get rid of like 4 or 5 of them, this is one that would go, because I'm just not that interested and I'm not that into the character. On one of these, I'll be very interested when we get to the Dark World, because the Dark World's hated, and I remember quite enjoying it, and I remember enjoying it more than this. But I might get to it and just go, this is a joke. I don't know. I've not really watched it much since release. That's it from me. I think this is pretty average, and it's going to rank really low. But it's a sign of Marvel's success that a film that's probably going to finish in the bottom 5 is pretty decent. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Dark World. I mean, I've not seen it, but I remember being pretty down with it. But then again, I don't know about it's just being sort of like carried with the general voice. Now watching it with a bit more fresher eyes, I might feel a bit differently. So I'd be interested to come around with Dark World. But in terms of this film, this is probably one of my favourites. This could potentially be in the top 5 for me. I don't want to say definitely for now because it's still early doors. But so far, this is the best one. The best ones is Iron Man and this so far. This one has a bit more.
Well, I go along with that, but then that's because it's the 4th in the middle 2 ones.
Yeah, but there is a bit of I do take to this film a lot more. It's a lot more emotional kick for me. I do find the simplicity of the plot I just think it just works. It's not overcomplicated. It doesn't feel baggy. I think it's rewatchable. I watched it 3 times this past week, and I've not been bored by it once. I generally do appreciate and really have affection for this entry in the Marvel. So yeah, I reckon this will probably be in my top 5. I would think.
Mental. Anyway, Becca.
I can't really add much to. Can't really add more to what Chris said there, really. Again, as I said at the beginning, agreeing with Dave, it's kind of pretty much. Some of the effects are a little bit dodgy.
Effects aren't everything. Effects aren't everything. They're just.
Well, it's in terms
story
of what
that counts.
Story, characters, plot, apart from plot device in the 3rd act.
That's true if you like a film with shit effects.
Well, it's just obviously because it's very early days for Marvel, and it's still in phase 1 of proceedings, and now it's all shiny and very high end. But probably again in 8 or 10 years' time, we'll look back on some phase 2 or 3 and think, really?
No, we won't. No, we won't, because Avatar still pretty much stands up. I don't
think anyone gives a shit about Avatar.
No, they don't. But it still,
even if it's the highest grossing movie, one of the highest grossing
Iron Man still looks fine. They've exceeded their grasp here. That's what's happened. They've tried to do too much, and they've pissed away. They've pissed away a ton of budget building a shit fucking town. That's what they've done. So they don't have enough to do the effects properly. Hence, it looks a bit cheap. It's not a question of it's dated. It looked bollocks 10 years ago.
Look, I don't think this film is going to be like the go-to most well-regarded Marvel films, because I don't think in its DNA it's up there with like the bigger, shall we say, the bigger ones, the ones that have a lot more, like say the Winter Soldier,
like the Incredible Hulk, that sort of thing.
But do you know what I mean? It hasn't got, I think when they think about like Guardians of the Galaxy was something where it's a bit more like you can see much more what's happening on screen kind of thing. This one's a lot more personal, a lot more character driven, and those things tend to kind of seem to be a lot more small scale. People tend
I
not to
agree.
want them.
You can't blame it for being cheap, but it's cheap. So it affects the end result. Yeah. It just does. It just does. You look at it and go, You didn't have the money to do what you wanted
I
to
guess
do.
what it comes down to, I'm just not that bothered by if film's cheap
Fair
or
enough.
not. You know,
Fair
I
enough.
think that's what I think. Generally, it's
Anyway.
down to that.
We've interrupted Becca. Sorry, Becca.
No, not at all, not at all. No, still, as I say, there are aspects of it that do take you out of the film. Like there are some aspects of the Destroyer which kind of think doesn't gel very well, and there's a slight blurring around it in which it doesn't. Obviously, it's not kind of matched to its surroundings. That does take you out of the film as well, and also the Dutch angles. So many Dutch angles. Oh my god, which again do take you out of the film sometimes. But no, the cast are all on fine form. It's cast brilliantly. Was really well scripted, really good. Soundtrack score is fantastic. Yeah, it's really enjoyable. It rattles along at a really good pace, and rarely does this film drag. Script is on ding form, and yeah, it's really, really enjoyable. I think when I'm sort of starting to rank as we go, it'll probably be, I mean, top 5, top 10 certainly.
Nowhere.
If not, you know, top
rank
5. But I don't know at the moment.
I can't knock either of you.
I can tell you what my number 1 and 2 will be. But
We're all here to have different opinions, so I promise you I'm not knocking it. But my mind is blown. I don't know how anyone can put this in the top half. I just can't. This is.
Bear in mind,
we'll
Dave.
find out
Bear in
at the
mind,
end,
my
so-
rankings tend to be come from a lot more personal point of view
I'm
rather than
not,
like.
I'm not knocking it, and like I really do genuinely respect both of your opinions. So I'm not making fun of you. I just literally do not get it. This is like bottom handful of Marvel films. It just is. I just don't get how anyone can go. It's in the top half. It's cheap and a bit fucking like.
Yeah, but not many feel like but I understand that. But I understand
in
that.
terms of like
I
plots and
understand that
characteristics, you know,
objectively.
it makes up for a lack of what it lacks in special
But
effects.
if you have a personal connection with it, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, like I understand objectively, but then again, how many Marvel films make me well up?
Yeah, it's a bit.
You
like
know what I
me
mean?
and
It's like,
wo-
well, okay,
it's a
well-
bit like me and what women want, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly like that. So yeah, no, I think in terms of actually character development and character's journey and actually what's going on thematically on screen with a story, this is way up there. I think generally with the Marvel stuff, it is just general superhero
fair,
fodder.
During Spider-Man: Homecoming, I cried over the Marvel logo, so I was in tears a bit quickly there. To be fair, so
Okay, well, I'll be interested to hear your reasons why.
I'll
when we get to
explain
it.
that when we get there. I cried over the fucking Marvel logo. Yeah. Anyway,
See, I'm not sure if it's going to be like a really serious general reason or just like some sort of haphazard, like I stubbed the toe away.
I stubbed my toe. Yeah. Yeah, I was in the cinema getting a blowjob. My teeth were really sharp. Yeah. No, it was because Spidey was home.
yeah, that's understandable.
I was just like, and then he played the music and I'm like, he's home, fucking hell. Yeah. This film I'd have cried more over the fucking waste of Just for Men on the eyebrows. But there you go. Anyway, Becca, teach us more about this.
So, fun facts. Obvious facts. Obviously, Thor is where we get Thor's Day from in the English language. So, we all knew that anyway. Yeah, fun fact number 1: Vic Armstrong, legendary Bond and many other films, Indiana Jones, for example, stunt coordinator, was the supervising stunt coordinator on this film. I think that's a very cool fact.
Okay.
Anyway, I just personally think
We
that's
did
quite
too.
cool.
We just didn't realise when you were done, so we didn't say anything.
No, that's
and then there was,
okay.
and
I
then there
thought
was a
that's
long
quite cool.
silence.
We
and sounded
were
unimpressed.
just excited with just pure silence.
Yeah.
By the way, Rene Russo's 64. Fuck me. And she's married to Dan Gilroy as well. Didn't know that.
Dan Gilroy, who's that?
He wrote the Bourne films and
Isn't that Tony Gilroy?
There's a lot of crossover from the action adventure genre into this film.
he directed Nightcrawler. That's what it is.
Okay.
Why? That'd be why. Mm-hmm.
And evenings he directs Rene onto his face.
Yes.
Come this way, Miss Russo.
Come this way.
So yes, another fun fact. I've got 5.5, but I won't number them. I've got a really great fact.
Just as well, because half a fact would be rubbish. You'd read half a
No,
sentence
this is
and
it.
stop.
This is it.
You go, and another fact is, and then just stop.
That's it. That's just the fact. I've got a really cool fact about Thor Ragnarok when we get to it. I'm quite excited. I thought I was going to do it here, but I shall save it for when we get to Thor Ragnarok.
All right.
Because I just learned it the other
Is it
weekend.
that Chris Hemsworth had a haircut?
No.
Damn.
Mind blown.
That's all I got.
Because like Thor was known for his hair as well, very much.
Yeah.
As well as everything else. His hammer, for example. So I was quite shocked. I was like, oh, he's had a haircut. Oh my god.
Yeah,
So,
that was Chris Hemsworth. Not wanting
obviously.
to wear the wig anymore.
No, well, fair enough. Fair to him. I don't blame him really.
There was a fine buffet.
He did look good, didn't he?
Buffon.
Do?
Yeah, not a buffet.
Buffet. A feast
Like
for the
buffets I had
eyes.
afterwards.
Cocktail sausage and some chicken legs.
It was a
On a
feast for
lovely
the eyes, yeah.
style.
Oh dear. That was your fine buffet, was it?
All right, carry on.
That's really funny.
Fine.
Oh, you're getting as bad as me, Chris. I'm sorry. Mixing up your words. Oh dear.
Sorry, I'm going to mute my mic. I can't stop laughing. Carry on.
That's quite funny. So, okay, another fun fact. As well as obviously being a famous legendary actor, Anthony Hopkins is also an accomplished painter and conductor. A fun fact number 3, Stan Lee claimed that he always wanted to play Odin, but also was happy for Hopkins to take on the role.
Can you imagine that? Stanley going like...
No, I was sort of thinking, actually, who else can play Odin? Wow. Mr. Marvel himself. Stan Lee.
Well, yeah, but... you know,
It would just be
let's
the
be
cameo
like...
role, wouldn't it?
Now for Excelsior!
Excelsior! Yeah, this is it.
Oh, poor
But no, he's got quite a
Stanley.
good cameo here. So, fun fact number 4. Obviously, the film makes extensive use of Norse mythology. For example, the Bifrost, originally thought of by the Norse as a rainbow, and obviously here in the film it's depicted as a pathway of rainbow light. Actually, reminded me of, this will sound really sacrilegious now, but Rainbow Road in Mario Kart, which is my most hated level of all time. And also, as I mentioned earlier, Yggdrasil as well, which is like kind of like the tree of the universe showing the 9 worlds. And lots more, but I won't go into it, unfortunately. Fun fact 5.5? Another Shakespeare connection. There's an interview with Tom Hiddleston saying he described his role as Loki, didn't paid, as like a nastier version of villain Edmund in Shakespeare's King Lear. Legitimate son of the Earl of Gloucester, who tricks his father into banishing his legitimate brother Edgar into exile. So it's kind of like a parallel there as well. Talking of like the tricksy nature of him, of the character of Loki, I would like to see Hiddleston play Iago in a vision of Othello, which would be pretty cool because he's kind of, again, you don't know, he has many faces. Obviously not like Janus, obviously 2 faces, but is that kind of like villainous character, I think is quite similar to
from
Loki.
Shakespeare to one of the worst acting performances I've ever seen in about 2 sentences.
Oh, sorry.
It's like Sean Bean's fucking
No, Sean
bollocks
Bean
in that film.
Well, no, just in terms of
A climbing accident.
Two-Face Roman God.
What?
It wasn't God that gave you this face.
Have you tasted the James? I have.
Tastes like strawberries. I would.
Last orders, James.
Buy me a pint
Buy me a pint.
of
Franklin James.
alcohol.
No, for me.
That sounded natural, Pierce. You sound like one of the guys.
Good old bros.
You know.
No, I think it'd be quite good because
Buy me a pint of Boddingtons.
Boddington.
Buy me a pint of alcohol.
Oh, for frothy bevy.
She's worried about product placement, Becca.
Other beers are available.
Buy me a pint of alcohol so I can enjoy a commercial
Yeah, but
beverage.
no one's giving us any money. Like, it doesn't matter.
Oh no! And then as an excuse, she said, "But someone from a stationer might be listening." It's like, well, fucking name them then. If you want some money.
Other stationers are available.
Other than who? We haven't named any, Becca. Anyway.
Okay, so anybody from any of the main biscuit manufacturers in the UK,
Bourbons!
please send us bourbon.
Fucking bourbon.
Make sure they are super delicious. We will plug them on your show.
Always delicious, they're bourbons.
We'll plug them on our show.
They
even.
arrive pre-autumn. Carry on.
Also, please make them vegetarian. Thank you.
What, like, none of those pork bourbons.
Well, I don't know. I got something of it. I think it was from some discount store, and they're like gelatin, and I was like, what?
Oh,
what?
fuck that. Who
The
cares?
biscuit. Bloody hell! No, not doing this.
I
Really
can't
shite.
have gotten that far with it.
No, but anyway, I would like to see him play that role because that would be quite cool. But yes, that's my
Bourbon.
bourbon.
That was a
Very
long
tasty.
time ago. I don't know what we're talking about.
He's already quite delicious, so you know.
It's delicious. Tasty. Spunky.
I didn't say spunky. You said spunky.
Dude,
Anyway, Tom Hiddlebum. Very tasty.
really fun.
That's what he's known to his fans.
Is he?
Hiddlebum.
Really? His fans
Yes.
aren't very witty, are they?
No.
Mm.
Anyway, yes, that's my fun facts, and I've got an amazing fact, which I shall say for Ragnarok if I can remember.
Brilliant. Teaser there for something Becca probably won't remember to say. Enjoy, folks.
I've got it written down, so I shall bust it out.
Well, okay. Is
No,
that
I
it?
just think it's a really cool technical fact about how the film was made.
I've been so caught up in the factage I've lost count. Are we done?
Yes, we're done now. That was my
That's
fun.
fun, folks! Alright, so
That was a fun klaxon. Your cat suddenly wakes up thinking, what? What's that on about?
is my cat in here? No, my cat's not in here. Sorry.
Oh, leave that.
I'll ask for her in a minute. Social media, folks.
Well, you can find me on Cinematronics on Twitter. Not that I tweet that much, but yeah, you can find me on there. And you can find this podcast. I know it's back on all the back old episodes. You can find at cinematronics.co.uk.
You can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976, and apropos of nothing, the Mission Impossible series is getting me stiff. Becca.
Final fun fact.
Kinky.
Today is actually Chris's birthday, 3rd of August.
I forgot that. He's retired
Fun
as
fact.
Batman today.
Yeah.
I'd just like to remind you, my year as Batman was 2011 to 12, one of the record years for drops in crime. But Chris's year has been the first year crime has risen. But anyway, enjoy your retirement, young man.
Yeah, but it would have been even more higher had I not been on duty. That's all I'm saying.
So what you're saying is the world went to hell and you just pulled it back towards normality.
Ish, yeah. Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah. That's
Did you-
basically it.
I dread to
Did
think
you
what kind
go
of year
out
that
dressed-
I'm inheriting as my year when my year as Batman comes.
Did you go out dressed as Batman at all?
Of course.
Right, fair enough.
Can you tell?
Crime dropped in a 2-meter radius from his
2 meters.
from his sofa.
Crime dropped in around the vicinity of Chris's house
Yeah.
in the town where he lives.
No one got into his garden all year.
No,
I was that good, no one reported on it. That was that
nobody
good.
littered. Nobody, you know.
All right. Becca, tell people more about yourself and this show.
I don't know about me. Yeah, you can follow us on
Yeah,
Twitter at
We do,
Expect Us
but there's
Talk.
loads of filthy stories there we don't know.
Never you mind. What happens at con stays at con.
Really?
No.
When you say cons, do you mean prisoners? You've been doing lots of prisoners? Or do you
I
mean
don't-
you've been doing lots of people at Comic Con?
No, a friend of mine went to this Comic Con that he'd never been to before, and
Did you
I
go
believe
to-
I believe he got horribly drunk.
Did
And
he?
I was trying to pry the information out of him, and he goes, "Oh, what happened at con stays at con?" I
To be
was like,
fair, I got
"Okay."
horribly drunk merely hours ago. I just sobered up in time for recording. It's fine.
Just had some coffee, and ding, there you were.
Yeah. All right.
No, I'm quite boring by comparison.
Yeah, I know.
But no, you can follow our show on Twitter at Expect to Talk, facebook.com/Expect Us to Talk, and you can also find us on the YouTube. Type in "Do You Expect Us to Talk?" You can find us on there. Also on iTunes and Stitcher. You both type in there "Do You Expect Us to Talk?" and you can find us on there. I was going to try and put us on Pinterest, but I gave
Fuck
up.
it.
Yeah,
Fuck it.
screw that. Likewise, I'm slowly getting rid of us off of Letterboxd because that's a useless waste of time.
What do you mean slowly? You're taking off one review a day or something?
Yeah, I just can't be asked to do it. I can't remember
Yeah,
what one.
neither could we. We didn't care.
It's a bit of a pain.
The
Yeah,
thing
you can
is,
post us,
that's a format to say what you think of films.
it's a platform.
This is a format to say what you think of films.
It's
So
a
what's the point?
platform. It's a platform, definitely.
I mean,
Yeah,
it'd
so
be
you
like
can
Mark Kermode having a letterbox. What would be the fucking point?
Yeah, all the films.
It would be useful at the times when he's not fucking off on some.
Oh, that pissed me off. I wonder what he thinks of Mission Impossible, and he wasn't working. So I looked at Rogue Nation to get an idea of what he thought of that, and he wasn't.
He's on holiday.
He quite liked Rogue Nation, is what I remember. When he comes back, he kind of recap. But
yeah, I know. But you look up the review, Kermode and Mail Mission Impossible.
It's somebody else doing it,
and it's some fucking
teenager.
Who is it this time? What's he on holiday?
I don't give a fuck. I don't care if it's the best reviewer in the world. I'm listening to see what he thinks.
So, and I quite like the stand-in teachers.
I don't bother. I delete it instantly if it's not them.
Oh,
literally.
I listen for Kermode and Mayo again as well, but I do quite like when they have like
he's
Edith Bowman or.
For example, he's quite good. But if it's Edith Bowman and Robbie Collin, gone.
Yeah.
Don't even listen. Don't care.
Oh, I like Robbie.
Yeah, but it's not him.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know how that goes, but.
Yeah.
Especially Sanjay Bhaskar as well.
For anyone listening, if you're not Mark Kermode, fuck off.
Oh no.
To be fair, that does take in most of you, but I mean,
to be fair, like I used to I quite like Floyd and Boyd when they did it. When they took over,
really good.
but now it tends to be like someone who just like, just don't care.
It's extraordinarily random.
knob.
And actually, I tend not to listen to the show now. I just look up the reviews for the films I want to see. I just look them up on YouTube. So can't be asked for 2.5 hours. I mean, who puts out a 2 to 2.5 hour podcast? It's excessive.
Really, who does that?
It's excessive in my view. So,
who throws a shoe, honestly?
Oh no, who throws a shoe? So I tend to just look up the review. So I looked up Mission Impossible, and it's some bird. So I didn't bother.
Oh, Clarissa.
I don't
Clarissa
care.
Loughrey?
Not him, so I don't care.
I'm sure she's very good, but
she might be brilliant. But there's a consistency to getting the same person's opinion every week.
Yeah, it's not what you're tuning for, is it?
No, exactly. I might disagree with him, but like I want the consistency of his opinion. So what's the point in tuning into Mayo's show?
You tune into like the entertainment to hear what Kermode has to say. It doesn't matter whether you agree with him or not. It's like I want to know what he thinks.
I tune in, and some stand-in who, by definition, won't think the same as him, gives an opinion. I don't care. So, frankly, if you to those listening who've ever
my dear, Dave doesn't give a damn.
If you've stood in for Mark Kermode, fuck off.
That's not my opinion.
Yeah.
However, what I do recommend is, at the moment, a brilliant programme on BBC4 here in the UK is Mark Kermode's Secrets of Cinema, which is a 5-part series, co-written by Kim Newman as well. Who
I'm chums with on Facebook because I'm a big deal.
No, I
met
him. I met him in the queue of Skyfall. That was it. Going to the premiere of that one, and
how was his tash?
Why was it he was in the queue for the ladies?
And the ladies. This was at the premiere, and I was like, I think that's Kim Newman. After the press screening, I was like, I think that's Kim Newman, and I was like, oh, excuse me,
you see Kim Newman. He's quite like recognisable.
It's Kim Newman. It's not. I think it's Kim Newman. Or it might be Idris Elba. They're not similar.
I mean, like, it's either Kim Newman or someone really, really trying to be Kim Newman.
Yeah.
But
I just don't. I was just like, I think that's I didn't want to go up to you and say blah blah blah. But it's like when I met Kermode that one time, again at another Bond related screening, and I was like, because I'm really rubbish at meeting famous people. I was like, are you not Kermode? And he's like, oh yes I am. I was like, oh, it's nice to meet you, and shook his hand and then ran away. I'm
imagining that literally shaking the hand, turning, and just running like.
I was like, "Oh, nice to meet you. I listen to Entertainment, blah 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 blah." And he's like, "Oh, right, thank you very much." And I was like, "Right, enjoy the film," and ran away because I think he was on his phone before going into the screening. And I was like, I got to do this.
Well, yeah. As long as he was nice to you, that's
right. We do have to sign off, but I will say. I never call you out by name, but I have to say, Ken Mioza, why have you just sent us a picture of Batman's penis?
Oh yeah, but where are the bat nipples?
I know. That's disturbing. Just sending us a photo of Batman's crotch.
Well, anyway. it's the one from Batman and Robin, isn't it? So the bat rubber.
Becca, you were going to tell us about some massive erections.
I will indeed. So this is from James Bond Radio. Important notice to the JBR Massive. I'm literally just going to read this out from the page. On Saturday, 24th of November 2018, several elite members of the JBR family will be embarking on a perilous mission to complete a challenge worthy of Bond himself. The JBR team will be attempting to run, walk and crawl a vertical mile of steps up London's Broadgate Tower, which has been chosen as the UK event for the Vertical World Circuit 2018. It's an elevation of 161 metres with 877 steps over 35 floors, times 12, total of 420 floors and 10,524 steps. For the exterior shots of Shanghai skyscraper in Skyfall, tongue twister, Eon used Broadgate Tower, located in the main business district in the City of London. Next to Broadgate Tower, 2 additional skyscrapers were added digitally in the film to make it look more like Shanghai. So it's the 12th tallest building in London, basically. And a select member of the JBR family will be training for this event in November, but will be, more importantly, raising funds for UNICEF. So, appointed as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador in 1991, Sir Roger Moore was dedicated to helping those who were unable to help themselves, an epitaph that belongs to as much mankind as was the great man who lived by it. So basically the quote was, "All children have the right to survive, thrive and fulfil potential for the benefit of a better world." So please support our JBR challenge, the Skyfall challenge, and donate towards UNICEF. And the following link you can visit is www.justgiving.com/fundraising/James-Bond-Radio-007. And please, if it's even like £1 or £50, I don't know. And there's a group of the dudes from the JBR family. I'm sadly not doing it for health reasons. But please, the group of them will be undertaking this challenge.
I'm not in it for laziness and can't be asked reasons, because it just takes miles to go and walk up some stairs.
But literally, if you go onto the James Bond Radio website page, James Bond Radio Facebook page, the details are on there, including the link and where you can donate. And if you're a member of the James Bond Radio Station S South Coast UK group, the information is also on there. And again, if you visit jamesbondradio.com, the information will be on there as well. I'll post a link on our Twitter, I'm sure. But I just thought I'd just give this a bit of a plug, because it's quite a monumental challenge for a really good cause.
I'll announce it again next week and throw some fucking energy and sex into it, alright? Anyway, I think we should be patriotic for a country none of us are from, which means Becca.
Do you expect us to talk or return with our review of Captain America, the First Avenger?